What's up, gentlemen?
What's going on?
What are you watching, Dave? Kobe Bryant?
Coach May, what up? You muted. I can't even hear you. Quarantine, man. Quarantine. You muted. I can't hear you.
By the host. There it is.
How you been?
Good. How about you?
I've been all right. Trying to survive quarantine with the shag.
Man, everybody's the same. Everybody needs a haircut.
Everybody.
One of our players yesterday found a barber in Boca. I was like, man, where do you go? He said he lets one guy in and nobody else can be in the shop. So there are a few working.
Tough soul. Tough soul. It ain't about who in there. It's about who's sanitizing the Clippers after they leave out.
I know.
Can y'all hear that? Oh,
Just a little bit. It's quiet. Let me turn on my volume. Not really. I can hear it in the background, but I can't understand it.
yeah. Let me see if I can. Still can't? All right, I'm not sure what's going on. All right. Oh, well, I need to fix it on that next time. All right. Well, you can hear me, though, right? All right, cool. All right. Welcome to this week's edition. Glad to have everyone. That's my bad on the video. We'll get that right for next week. Really excited about this week. Three really strong dudes, coaches that are obviously really good at what they do, and obviously I'm really thankful that they're willing to come on and share with us today. Just a couple. I know he's in here, so we're gonna take his be ready rules. If you have a question, I want you to introduce yourself, please. Say your name and where you're from, what program you're with. We'll have each coach speak, and then kind of, obviously open up for questions after that. So First up, we're going to start at the top. Coach Dusty May, Florida Atlantic University. I got to meet Coach May a couple years back through a mutual connection. Gus Hauser actually introduced me to Coach. And so Coach May first up. So Coach May, all yours, my friend.
Hey, Dave, I appreciate you having me on and giving me the opportunity to share my story. One thing about the quarantine, I'm sure we're all watching a lot of clinics, a lot of films. It's been really neat to hear other guys' stories through podcasts and through platforms like this. So without getting long-winded, and you guys can interrupt and ask questions at any point. My story, a lot like most of us, is unique that it's mine. So I guess I'll just start with a quick rundown from the beginning. My entry into college basketball is probably as random and as anyone in college basketball and maybe in the history of college basketball. I actually cut grass for a guy that worked at my mom's company, and I took care of his pool and his landscaping and all that. And he referred me to Dr. Larry Rink, who was one of Coach Knight's two best friends at the time at Indiana. And I was a solid player. I was being recruited by Division II schools. And Dr. Rink kept telling me, if you want to coach, then you need to go to Indiana and work for Coach Knight and be a coach. At the last minute, I got an itch to keep playing. I went to Oakland City University and played for a man named Mike Sandefar for 1 year. I was there my freshman year of college and realized that what I wanted to do long-term, that wasn't aligned with where I was at that point. So I transferred back to Indiana and worked as a student manager for 4 years. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of things. Number one, my high school coach and coaches growing up had such an impact on me. All I ever wanted to do was be a high school coach. So I had no aspirations of being anything more than a high school basketball coach in the state of Indiana. But what the Indiana experience did, I was sitting in the video room my second year cutting film, and Ron Felling asked me, "What are you going to do when you're done here?" And I said, "I'm going to be a high school coach." He said, "Have you ever considered getting into college coaching?" And I said, "No, I had no idea that was even an option." And he just rattled off what the guys prior to myself and the managers over there were doing. And it piqued my interest, and I changed my major from education to history and started coaching AAU, started driving Coach Davis and Pat Knight and Coach Treelor, those guys around on recruiting trips, and just trying to be as involved as I possibly could to learn the profession. And then I think it was my junior year, somebody told me, "Hey, there's so many guys working for Coach Knight that if you want to stand out, then you need to stay here all summer and help with camps and just be around." And for whatever reason that summer, the secretary and receptionist had to take an extended time off. So I think I got paid $7 an hour to answer the phone all summer and just be around. And then Coach Knight actually knew who I was and was able to develop at least a relationship from the periphery. But what going to Indiana did was just give you network credibility. I'll skip ahead to my first position after Indiana. When I was done, I was going to go to be a GA at Memphis. I went there for about 3 or 4 weeks. And it was Calipari's first year, Coach Calipari's first year, and I was going to be a GA and basically volunteer and work at FedEx is what it boiled down to. And I was there 3 weeks, and Coach Treelor called and said, "Hey, at Indiana at the time, there weren't GAs, there weren't video coordinators, there weren't operations guys. There was 3 assistant coaches, and Tim Garl was a trainer, and he ran a lot of the day in, day out of the program." So he said, "Hey, if you come back, we can get you graduate school and some rent money." And I said, "Okay, that sounds good." So I came back, and I was there preparing just to go back to school at Indiana and work with the program again. And I got offered a position at USC. I got offered an interview and an opportunity to go to LA to interview with Henry Bibby for a video operations position there right out of college. And I get off the plane, and Coach Bibby picks me up and says, "Hey, if you can work for that beep beeper, you can work for anyone. Here's the plan for the weekend. I'm going to give you some projects. We're going to spend some time together. But unless you're the village idiot, the job is yours." So the network credibility of working for Coach Knight, and obviously him saying good things and recommending myself to coach really helped. But a couple of things I learned as a young age, and I don't know if I learned it or if it just is kind of who I was, but being available all the time. I grew up in a gym. I remember my mom would drop me at the boys club at 8 a.m. with a sack lunch and pick me up at 5. So from a young age, I learned just to be around the gym. And when you're playing, even when you're not playing, you're watching the older guys play, you're sitting around and you're talking, you're hanging out, you're playing ping pong, whatever the case. So just being available and hanging around the gym, I feel like has put me in position to just be there and meet a lot of different people and just be available. And then obviously just hustle and working hard. And being a manager at that level is really a humbling experience because you're the lowest of the low. There's nothing more humbling than wiping up sweat in front of 18,000 people on assembly hall floor. So you learn not to have an ego. You're not above any job, and you learn just to do whatever you can to be around and be a part of a program and be a part of a team. So then I go to USC under Henry Bibby, who's a brilliant basketball coach. He coached at that point maybe 1,000 games, CBA. He coached in Venezuela. He coaches in Mexico. I talked to him 2 days ago. He coached in Mexico this year. So he's a lifer. I bet he's coached 1,500 games by now. So it opened up a whole different world to me that I wasn't aware of before. Coach Knight, everything is about the team. Even the individual workouts are all team-related shots out of the offense. Well, you go to LA and now you have the player development piece. You have the different, recruiting philosophy where it seemed like the coach is working for Coach Knight. They knew who could play for him, and it was a small pool. And I go to LA, and there's a guy on staff named Dave Miller, and we're writing 500 notes a day to the – I don't know if some of you guys have ever heard of Dave, but he had his philosophy of sending 500, 250, 500, 750 letters a day to the top recruits. So that was what we did. We sat in the office and probably 4 hours a day. We wrote handwritten notes. We could say whatever we really wanted to say. We had a list, a spreadsheet of some things we wanted to sell, but we could say whatever because we knew no one was reading that number of letters a day. So we got creative with it and tried to have some fun with it. But so it broadened my perspective on the way a program's ran. I mean, it's completely different. So then Mike Davis gets the head job at Indiana and brings me back in a similar role, a video administrative spot. I was there 1 year, the second year, and back then the rules were a lot different, whereas administrative guys, a big part of what we did was simply cold calling and recruiting and talking to people and getting background information. And year 2, he puts me on the road for 6 months. So I got a little bit of recruiting experience. Just being on the road and being around Coach Davis was eye-opening because he's so good with people and he's such a good recruiter. He's a great coach. But just being in a car with him for 15 hours a day or just being around him, I really tried to absorb what he did well, and that was connect to people and also teach and coach. So another great experience. And so I was there. He bumped me up the last 2 years. We actually signed the #1 recruiting class. The staff signed the #1 recruiting class in the country. Had a little bit of bad luck. It was last year, the early entry. Josh Smith goes to the NBA draft. Robert Rothbart declares for the draft, ends up playing in Europe. James Hardy switches from basketball to football his senior year. And so he came on a football scholarship, and he was a top 75 recruit. So everything kind of went sideways a little bit, but, Coach Davis obviously rebounded and had some great years there. And then I went to my next stop at Eastern Michigan. Charles Ramsey got the job. He was an assistant coach at the University of Michigan. And I had met Coach Ramsey whenever I went and worked Cal Berkeley's camps as a 19 or 20-year-old. I was an undergraduate, and I just go work the camp scene. And today, as a parent, it seems unfathomable that I would have a 19 or 20-year-old son that would just get on a plane in Indianapolis without a cell phone, without I don't even know if I had a credit card, and fly to San Francisco, get on I think it was the BART, the train that goes underwater, get off on a bus stop a mile from campus and figure out how to get to the dorms, get checked in, and spend 2 or 3 weeks across the country. So a neat experience, but I actually met Coach Ramsey at the camp, and then he was friends with Coach Davis and those guys. So he hired me my first position on the floor coaching, and I was there 1 year. And Billy Kennedy, who I'd met, Coach Kennedy came to Bloomington to spend a week with Coach Davis, just watching film and studying the game. And that was one of the roles I had where I would pick guys up from the airport, bring them in. And obviously head coaches don't have 10 or 12 hours to spend with other guys coming into town. So I would spend the whole day, whatever these guys needed to share. They'd sit in a video room. I try to explain everything Coach Davis did. And so I developed a relationship with Coach Kennedy. In addition to, I'd worked with Curtis Townsend, who is a close friend of Coach Kennedy. So I guess the point being that all these relationships and all these connections, I've heard other guys say they didn't know anybody or every job they had gotten was from a random person. Well, I was fortunate enough to somehow develop at least cordial relationships with the guys that ended up hiring me. So I go to Murray State. I was there 1 year under Coach Kennedy with a great staff, Steve Prohm, Chad Dollar, Amir, Abdur Rahim, just an unbelievable working environment. Then Mike Davis hired me back at UAB. So I worked for Coach Davis again. Then Kerry Rupp at Louisiana Tech, who is a basketball encyclopedia, learned so much from Coach Rupp. We worked together at Indiana. He hires me at Louisiana Tech. We get fired after 2 years, and had one really good year and it had one down year. We had some bad luck and made some bad decisions. And Coach Rupp and the staff, we were let go, and Mike White gets the job and does the unfathomable, goes against his father, everyone who said you can't retain anyone from the previous staff. And Coach White retained myself and Derek Jones, and retaining 2 guys off of a staff that just got fired. So definitely a lifeline and probably the biggest break of my career. But even then, like it wasn't about, and even looking back, I asked Coach White why he did it. And I can't speak, Derek brought so much to the table, being a Louisiana guy and a proven recruiter and coach and all that. And the one thing that he said, I told him, he asked me what I had going on. I said, yeah, I've got a couple other jobs going on, but I'm not really concerned. I'll go coach high school. I'll coach NAI. I'll coach Division II. I don't really care. I love to coach. I'm really, really tight. I'm frugal, so the money's not a big deal. I'll figure out a way to make it work. And my wife has always had a great job. She actually, without her, I wouldn't be in the coaching profession. I know. I tell a lot of young guys now, be financially independent. If your parents can help you, you'll have a chance to get in, because there's so many guys trying to get in and being able to make it financially when you don't make any money. So my wife supported me the first couple of years in coaching when I made about $500 less than my rent every month. So then Coach White did another unthinkable thing in our profession, take his entire staff to the University of Florida, replacing Billy Donovan, Hall of Famer. So we're at Florida for 3 years. And then Brian White, who's Coach White's brother, had worked with us at Louisiana Tech. He gets this job. A couple weeks later, makes a coaching change. And because I happen to be at a big state school, that's the profile the president wanted, one of the big state schools. And I'd worked with Brian. And then because we had won this league at Louisiana Tech, everything aligned for me to get this job, and very, very fortunate to have it. Blessed to be here. I have a great staff, a great group of guys. I can't enjoy being in a better working environment every single day. So I guess that's my journey in a nutshell. Probably skipped over a lot, but I just didn't want to be long-winded on my story. So I guess before I get into the coaching nuggets and value as an assistant and what I looked for hiring a staff, you guys fire away with some questions.
Dusty, hey, it's Russ, man. How are you?
Great, Russ. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. What would Dusty May entering 3rd year tell Dusty May that just took the job? What advice would you give him if you could look back on it?
I mean, all honesty, Russ, I probably feel like I did a better job in year 1 than I did in year 2. And just like I feel like I was a better evaluator right out of college than I am now. And I'll give you a good example. When I used to go watch guys, when Coach Davis put me on the road at 25, I didn't know what I was doing. I coached AAU. That's one thing I probably skipped over. When I was a sophomore manager, Mike Schrage, who's now the coach at Elon, and Joe Pasternak, who's the coach at UCSB, were managers 1 year ahead of me, 1 and 2 years ahead of me. They started coaching AAU just to get a feel and learn that side of the game, because we all knew our way getting in was going to be video and that side of it, because that's what Coach Knight was known for. And then it transitioned to Izzo, where the video guys were getting NBA jobs, they're getting college, those times. So they started coaching AAU. So then I started coaching AAU just to get some experience coaching. Coach Sean May, who played in North Carolina, had some really good guys and a great experience. But year 3, I'm trying to rewind back to year 1, where year 1, we really focused on what our guys did well and living in their strengths. And it seemed like this year I was too focused. We were too focused on what we didn't have, what we couldn't do, all those things. And it probably kept us from being as good as we possibly could. Now, the wins and losses may have been the same, but I know just reflecting, I would say the longer you get into it, the more I guess you want to figure out what's not working or what's not happening, instead of just really trying to focus on what you do well and then what everyone around you does well, and just live in your strengths. Anybody else?
Hey, Dustin, what's going on? It's James Barrett, Monroe College.
What's up, Coach?
How you doing?
Good.
I just want to ask you, when did you start to mentally prepare yourself to be a head coach?
To be honest, working with Coach Rupp as an assistant. Kerry Rupp had been a long time high school coach in Utah, and he was a Rick Majerus assistant, and then he took over the job for Coach Majerus. And I've never seen anybody study the game, live the game like Coach Rupp. I mean, he's incredible, basketball encyclopedia. So really working with him every day, I started to think differently. And I realized when I started coaching AAU that I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I played for a great high school coach. I played, being around Coach Knight every day. I thought I knew what I was doing. But then as soon as I started coaching and trying to run a practice, I realized, man, I've got a long, long way to go. So I knew early on I had a lot. I mean, I learned at 21, I needed to figure this out and be able to communicate with guys better and not be so emotional and really figure out who I was going to be. Because I tried to be like a baby Coach Knight, a 5'9" version of Coach Knight when I was young. So I started, I'm very, very critical of myself and very, very self-aware. So I knew at a young age I needed to figure out a way for me to be me. And so probably in my early 20s, I started trying to think like a head coach. I actually had the itch to go maybe try to get a prep school job. I applied for a NAI Division II job when I was at Eastern Michigan, just because I wanted to be a head coach and learn to coach. And they wouldn't give me a sniff. They were like, Division I guys, it's a completely different world. So then I learned like each NAI, D2, D3, that it's all completely separate in the people that are making the hires in their minds. So, I try to think like a head coach every single day. And to be honest, as a head coach, I don't see the game as well because there's so much more emotion attached to it. Whereas as an assistant, I try to be emotionally detached and really try to see the game and learn and think if I was down one or two seats just to prepare myself. I'm also trying to help the guys I work for.
Coach May, Jonathan Maddox, Morehead State, how you doing?
Good, Coach. How about you?
Good. What were some of your biggest adjustments going from the mid-major level, La Tech to Florida, and then from Florida to FAU, going mid to high, then high back to mid?
Luckily, I'd been at Indiana and working with Coach Davis, who I think is as good as there is in the country. He's one of the most underrated guys. So I'd been at that level to an extent, and so I knew a little bit of how it worked. The most eye-opening thing was as soon as we got the job, we were able to get involved with everyone, and we weren't able to get anyone the first year because we hadn't laid the foundation. And recruiting starts so much earlier for high major guys. I say it all the time now. If we see a sophomore and we think he's good enough, he's going to probably be too good by the time he gets to college. So, we'll recruit him obviously, and that's what we have to do. But the recruiting is you got to start with freshmen and sophomores and build long-term relationships. That was the biggest thing. The basketball is the basketball. The kids were great. I love the guys at Florida, the guys we inherited, the guys we signed. We just had to do it a little bit unconventionally at first. We signed a JUCO kid. We brought him with us. Then we took a grad transfer the next year. We took a couple, Jalen Hudson from Virginia, took transfers and then signed a couple high school guys. So we just tried to piece together the best roster we could using all avenues.
Cody Topper with the University of Memphis. Dusty, how you doing?
Good. How about you, man?
Doing well. Question pertaining to, you said you were a 5'9" Coach Knight, and obviously you've been in that environment. The kids have changed since then, and coaching guys differently from like a mental perspective. Can you talk about that a little bit, how you've seen that change and kind of some adjustments that you've made in order to get the most out of your guys? Yeah,
I've really changed over this 20-year journey, but I'm probably a little bit too soft now as a head coach. I try to coach the guys a lot individually and spend a lot of individual time with them. But this year there were times whenever the staff challenged me to kind of go at guys and they responded well to that, which I was a little bit disappointed. But there's such a fine line between holding guys accountable and making it personal. And we get on guys, we push and challenge, but we just try not to make it ever personal. And once I had kids, and I've got a couple emotional sons that love the game and play hard, and a kid, I would see an assistant coach maybe put their hand on their shoulder. And I thought, man, that really had an impact where it calmed them down. It allowed them to teach and coach. So we coach every guy differently. Some guys, and I really try to pay attention to how guys respond. If I jump a guy and he responds well, then obviously I'm going to try to get on him a little more aggressively going forward. If I jump a guy aggressively and he goes in his shell, then I'm probably going to try to talk to them and just communicate with them in a different way. So just trying to be aware of how each guy responds and what their background is. But I was definitely the opposite end of the spectrum when I was younger.
Coach Travis Lewis, Toledo St. Francis. Just given the whole background, all your stops that you made, which part of your career do you think was the most significant in building you who you are as a head coach now?
Since my wife's not on here and she's not around, the moving and seeing how so many different guys did it. I look back and think I moved a lot when I was young. I think when my oldest son was 7, he had lived in 6 states. And it's obviously tough at the time and it's hard on your family, but from a developmental and relationship and well-rounded approach, it really helped me because I worked with so many different guys. And then I worked on some dysfunctional staffs that changed every year. You'd have 2 or 3 new assistants every year on a couple of them for whatever reason. And so I got to work with a lot of different guys. And that's one thing as a young guy, operations guy or whatever, video guy, you learn a lot from the assistant coaches. You probably learn as much from the assistant coaches as you do head coaches, and you brainstorm and you talk and you share ideas. And, then the key piece is figuring out a way to really work on teaching and communicating. And those are the things that, we all should be working on daily, how to reach our guys, how to coach more effectively, how to teach. Maybe that's one thing out of all these podcasts, maybe one piece of terminology, one phrase could help you reach one of your players better than it's all worth it.
Dusty, how you doing? Daryl LeBerry.
What's up, Coach?
Quick question for you as far as what's going on with the pandemic right now, and hopefully you didn't answer this. I got on a little bit late, so hopefully you haven't talked about this already. But how difficult has it been recruiting? I guess newer kids that you didn't have a prior feel for or relationship for that you tried to recruit in the spring, and then also how difficult has it been and what have you done for your current players as far as staying and touching them and having contact with them so to make sure that they're on the right pace for whenever you bring them back?
First question with recruiting, we had basically our roster full. We had one guy unexpectedly leave, and we had been recruiting. I have a staff we've always said if 3 guys really recruit hard and the head coach recruits aggressively, you have 4 guys and you can cast a pretty big net and do some homework. And luckily the staff had been working all year, and we lost a kid on a Friday night and basically had him another guy committed on Saturday.
Nice.
Because we'd been recruiting him all year and had a relationship with him already. And then it just became a Zoom call and a virtual campus tour. With our guys, they're finishing. Today's the last day of finals and final projects. So we haven't bombarded them with a lot of information and a bunch of meetings. We've been doing about basically 1 meeting a week. We encourage our seniors to do 2, lifting exercise sessions a week. And I'm not even sure exactly what they do. We left it up to them, and our compliance basically told us to stay out of it. So our strength coach sends them a list of workouts. They do 2 together a week led by our upperclassmen. And I try to call or FaceTime 3 or 4 guys a day just to hit them. I try to call 3 or 4 parents or those close to the kids, every 3 or 4 days. So just try to touch every kid every 3 or 4 days. And I know every time I talk to one of our kids, they say, hey, I just got off the phone with Coach so-and-so, or I just got off the phone with so-and-so. So I know our staff and everyone's pretty involved with our guys. And that's what we do. We hit them with small doses. We don't bring them over to the house to spend 8 hours, but we like to have them over for dinner. We go see them in the training room. We can stop by the locker room every day. So it's kind of the same thing with them now, where we'll just call and just shoot just talk for 2 or 3 minutes.
Nice.
We're going to start having speakers this week, though. I'm trying to be creative with getting some different guys to talk to our players. And once again, we'll try to cap it at 15 or 20 minutes.
Anyone else? All right, Coach, you want to go ahead with just some nuggets you learned, what you look for in the staff, all that stuff?
Yeah. I'll skip ahead to the value as an assistant, because I know as an assistant coach, we're always curious, and I'm big on feedback. I try to give our guys daily feedback. But I looking back on, and even if I have to go back as an assistant, I'll probably, if we coach long enough, we're definitely going to get fired at some point. If I had to go back as an assistant coach, what I would do differently and what I thought I did well. The one thing that I think probably was my strength over the years was just my consistency. Every day tried to be the same. Went through a couple bad seasons. You know, Travis and I went through a tough season, year one of a first-year head coach, and we're 7-21, and it was a blast every day because the guys brought it every single day. They tried to work, they got better. So consistency and for your head coach, knowing exactly what he's going to get every single day and who you are 365 days a year. And there's going to be conflict, there's going to be friction, but if they know who you are to the core every single day and you know exactly what you're going to get out of your staff, then you're very, very appreciative of that. But a lot of coaches talk about it, and Coach Knight, the whole thing was loyalty. We talk about loyalty to the program. I don't expect our guys to be loyal to me. I expect all of us to be loyal to each other. Our staff as a unit, as a team, we're expected to be loyal to each other. Our players, we're loyal to them. We expect the loyalty in the return. But that's something that we try to live every day. So we don't talk about the loyalty piece. I think it's just common sense when someone gives you, and I'm so appreciative to everyone that's ever given me a job. If you gave me a job at any point in my career, I still call and say, Coach, I can't thank you enough for you giving me the opportunity to work for you. I learned so much. And some of them I learned a ton and some I learned a little bit, but either way, I'm very, very appreciative. And I think that alone takes care of the loyalty piece, the common sense. If someone gives you a job, you should work as hard as you possibly can for them and do the best job you can for the program as a whole. Same agenda, winning and improving. That's really all we talk about. We want to win and we want to improve. And guys that aren't playing, if they're improving, then usually they're happy and they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. This is one thing that I really tried to get better at the last few years, especially at Florida whenever we were dealing with a little bit different. The guys have a little bit bigger camps and more people around them to convince the players to see the decisions from the head coach's eyes or from the head coach's perspective. And I think if you can do that, if you can bring a kid in as an assistant and things aren't going well, because obviously if things are going well, then he's happy and everyone's hunky-dory. But if you can get a kid who's not getting the playing time or getting the whatever he's trying to get, if you can get him to see things from the head coach's eyes, it'll help that kid and help the program out. We talk about it a lot. Everyone sees the world through a different set of lenses. I tell our guys that all the time. What they see is not what I see. What I see is not what he sees. So let's all try to get on the same page and make sure we're trying to do the best we can to pull in the same direction while also seeing the world through a different set of eyes. I mean, we each watch a Jordan documentary. We all see something differently, and that's what's healthy about being on a team. I already said if the players feel like they're getting better, then usually they stick around and you have great retention. Developing routine for younger, newer players, I would try to express to the older guys like, hey, I've got to spend more time with these new guys and help them develop a routine and decide who they're going to be. And then I'm still going to give you as much time as I possibly can. But right now, you've got to help me by being a little bit more self-sufficient. So I can't spend as much time with you because as an assistant coach, we usually all have, maybe it's our position, maybe it's certain guys we have similar personalities to. We're naturally attracted to certain people. So really try to develop routines for younger, newer players and force them to have a routine, not let them leave after practice or make them come earlier even when they didn't feel like it. And it usually just becomes who they are after a certain amount of time. Couple nuggets, things that I feel like I've learned and maybe we do well, or things that are very important to me. We don't take ourselves that serious. We work very, very hard. We serve our guys, and it really is a labor of love. I don't call my staff every day now. I don't check in on them. I know they're working. And if I call any of them today and ask them about a recruit, I ask them about an offense or a defense or something we've been working on, it's usually done before I ask. It's sometimes I get annoyed because I'm like, you finished that, all right, hey, shoot me a text, let me know that's done because you guys are already done. So staff camaraderie, we laugh, we're good friends. We play noon ball together, we play tennis together, we have lunch together, we argue, we fight, we disagree, but it is like a brotherhood. And I look back now at all the staffs that I've worked on, I can't think of very few guys that I don't have a great relationship with today. Because I know we're all different, but we all brought a unique skill set and we spend so much time together. This has to be fun. And when you're working hard and you're in the trenches with guys who believe what you believe and you guys are like-minded, then usually it's a lot more enjoyable because this is basketball. This isn't rocket science. It's, we're all trying to do the same thing. And if you can have fun and laugh with it, it makes it go by a lot more enjoyable for everybody. Relationship with players, talked about small doses, check-ins. Our staff, if our players lift after practice, we go lift with them. We're in the training room. We stop by the cafeteria. We have them at the house. We just try to spend a lot of time with them, because relationships, it's hard to speed up relationships. We talked about it at Florida the first year. That was the toughest part of going in and speed dating. And you can do that with administrators and coaches, but with players, Don Meyer used to say, kids and dogs, you can't trick kids and dogs. So you can't really speed up relationship, and just hopefully you're a genuine person. And the one thing that we've really tried to use is with recruits and our current players is, hey, talk to everyone we've coached, talk to the walk-ons, talk to the best players, and see what we are really deep down as people, because I think as coaches, we all say the same things and we all want the same thing, but how you live your life on a daily basis is sometimes that's what separates us. So we encourage everyone we recruit to do a lot of homework on us. We've got nothing to hide. Work ethic, I said it, we work very, very hard. It's the foundation of everything we do. With high level of intensity, we're very, very driven. Next thing is sacrifice. Probably outside of just being available and luckily having a few people like me as a person, sacrificing has probably been the biggest thing, where I tell our guys all the time, especially as assistant coach, and you have a different relationship and roles are a little bit different. It's like, I'll give you my time 24/7, and there's nothing more valuable I can give you. So sacrificing for your guys, and it's hard on your family, but sacrificing, we all sacrifice so much. So we ask our players to sacrifice shots, playing time, and we have to sacrifice our ego. We have to sacrifice our opinions sometimes, but that's part of what we think will make us successful. Curious, always looking for the best way for us to do things. How we do things may not be the best way for Dave and Hargrave, for all those type of things. So we're always curious, trying to find a better way, and it might not be the right way, but we're always looking for a better way. And anticipation, a lot of problems can be seen if we're really aware. Almost every time we've had a kid transfer or something's happened, we've had conflict during the season with players. All the signs were there right in front of us, and we chose not to look at them, and we chose not to address them at the time. So I think if you anticipate issues, and usually with every team, you know the personality of your guys, you recruited them, you've coached them, you can anticipate what can keep your team from maxing out or being the absolute best they can be. And even in individual meetings, we asked our guys before the season, what do you think could keep this team from being the absolute best it can be? And you come up with about 10 different answers that guys say, and then you try to form your own opinion. But that's something we really try to look ahead. And for example, if you got some really good sophomores and you brought in a big freshman class, and you know your sophomores are going to play, you know you're going to have to do a great job of spending time and developing those freshmen, because they're not going to get the minutes that they're hoping for or that anyone wants. So usually those problems are right out front of us. It's just a matter of addressing them and attacking them and figuring out what the solution is to the problems. I guess any questions there, and I'll skip ahead to what I thought about when I was hiring a staff.
Are you okay with maybe some process questions, like about how you run your stuff over there? Just not like offense, defense, but more like your program.
Right.
So yeah, a couple of my questions would be like practice times you mentioned lifting after practice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you like? And like what time of day are you guys usually trying to practice? Things of that nature.
We practice every day. We have 11 to 2. That's our slot. Our women go from 8 to 11, and we have 11 to 2. We're going to switch it up this year. We don't practice long. We're on the floor for we probably go hard for an hour and 20 minutes. We try to be on the floor 15 or 20 minutes early, and then we stay 20 to 30 minutes after practice. And each of our guys, we stole the daily items from the Spurs, where you need to be working on your floaters, you need to be working on your shot fakes, whatever the case. And each guy, we encourage them to have their own routine. Then we go hard.
So with your vitamins, is there are you having them separated into groups at baskets, and is there a coach at each basket doing something specific to what you're talking about, or is it more like you guys got to be in here and this is kind of on you guys? Or
there's usually a coach each basket or a GA, and we try to do it as much of this is your idea, this is your plan, this is your development. And, I'll see them walk in, hey, so-and-so, remember, this is what you struggled with yesterday on your whatever the case. remember your ball screen setups. You're just coming off the ball screens without setting it up. Hey, once you spend 4 or 5 minutes really focusing on your ball screen setups to get loose, things like that. And then the assistant coaches will grab two or three guys, and then some of them are coming in straight from class because one set of classes in at 10:50, and they'll come straight from class. So they'll get there at the bell, and then we'll hold them after. Maybe it's just getting reps up. Maybe it's just trying to get them to read a closeout. This year, we're going to switch it up. We're going to lift at 11 to 11:30 with the smaller group, and then we're going to shoot from 11:30 to 12, and those two groups will be flip-flopped. And then that way we can get most of our shooting, our lifting done before, because we got a new facility, so now we have 2 weight rooms. Last year, we had a small slot to lift, so we had to go in there as a full team. So the staff and team would go in right after practice. This year, we're going to switch it up because we have more time flexibility. And we really try to work in smaller groups, in film, on the floor. And even last year, I'm not a big drill guy by any means. I like to play. I like to compete and teach out of certain actions or segments or what we're working on. Well, last year, we broke down a lot into stations, like old school camp stations, where each assistant coach had a station. And then we did the same thing offensively. And our guys really retained the information much better. Our team retained the information much better. I didn't like it. That's not the way I like to coach, but they were better at it. So that's so now we'll probably do 10 or 15 minutes of stations every day to get loose after we've already shot and we've lifted, just to kind of get into practice.
How do you see like film working into like that, your time slots? How are you going to, and would you do like, so you're doing like a 30-30 rotate. Would you do like a 20-20-20, like add a film segment also in a small group, or how are you going to do that?
To be honest, Coach, I clip every practice and every game individually. And so I encourage our guys to come through the office 5 minutes a day. If you miss a day because you're busy, I get it. But every 2 or 3 days, and the guys who are really serious about it, like the point guards, they come in every day for 5 to 7 minutes. So usually my morning is almost 50% of my mornings up until 11 is just one-on-one time with our guys or small groups with our guys. So we do a lot of teaching in small groups film-wise, and then the day after the game, we'll watch 20 minutes before we do anything else. And even with that, our edits aren't ever over 5 minutes. We do a lot of just small doses just to keep our guys engaged. But I love watching film. I like teaching through film. So it's a good opportunity for me to spend 5 minutes a day with each guy, check on them. How's classes? How's your family? Hey, have you thought about doing this? What do you think about this? Hey, you struggled with this yesterday. Those type of thing. I mean, you really need to work on. Let's get on the verse after practice. You're getting winded, so just give us a few minutes to spend individually with the guys.
Thank you.
And that's every day, and it's time consuming. So, gee,
Coach May, can y'all hear me? Can you hear me?
You're good.
What's up, Coach? I wanted you to, I guess, speak on the development of Anthony Adger and Jalen Ingram. Like, what was your approach to those two guys? Because my senior year playing with them, they were mentally, you could tell they were, I guess, they weren't all the way in it. I think Jalen might have averaged 8, and he jumped to 19 and 7 the next year when you arrived. And Anthony Adger wasn't getting much playing time. And his senior year, he was third team all coverage. So I always wondered, like, what was your approach in there? Player development?
I said it earlier, G, and I think the first year we did a great job of really focusing on what the guys did well. And when I got the job, everyone on campus, everyone that played against these guys, all had an opinion of all your players. And I tried to watch 2 or 3 games just to get a foundation of how you guys played, how things were done, just to get an overall, I guess, broad stroke of what I was getting into. With those guys, early on in workouts, obviously Jalen's versatility. He's 6'7". I thought he had a beautiful shot. He could use both hands. He was a football player. I love football players that play hoops. I thought he could be an elite offensive rebounder. I think he was averaging 4 offensive rebounds a game the first year when he tore his ACL. So Jalen was obvious. You're 6'7". You can do a lot of things. Both hands. You can shoot. You can dribble. You can pass. You can post. He's easy to like. So we knew at this level, our 4 threes had always been really successful at this level. So we knew we had to have one of those guys that you could play off the elbows and pick and pop and isolate. With Ant, he was just really, really competitive, and he lived in the gym. And being a basketball gym rat junkie, I love being around. And my sons would come in and shoot on a Saturday morning at 7 or 8 a.m., and they'd be like, Ant's in here shooting, coach, or Ant's in here playing pickup with some guys from Lynn. Now I was concerned because he kept saying, "Guys, you guys keep losing to Lynn." But Lynn had a really good team too. They were loaded.
Yeah, they had a lot of seniors. They were good.
So I was a little bit concerned. Our first year we signed 10 players, and those, and Ant and Jalen, and then even Sim. Sim was 6'10", lefty. That I think he averaged 0.6 points a game as a junior. Never played, hated basketball, and I think just a change and kind of reinvigorated him. But we looked at Sim and saw, man, 6'10" that can really move his feet. He's got great energy. Didn't put in a lot of time off the floor, and that didn't bother me because from 11 to 2, he brought it. He was a hard hat, lunch pail guy. So we talk about that as a staff. We can't expect all these guys to love it as much as we do, but if they don't, then 11 to 2, they better treat it like it's a hard hat mentality. And so it's usually either or with our guys. Either you have to eat, drink, and sleep it like we do, or you have to really, really bring it and be concentrated and go hard when you're supposed to be here. And that's what Sim was. So those 3 guys were phenomenal. And then we brought in 10 guys, 1 grad transfer, an immediate eligible transfer, 2 JUCOs. I think we brought 4 high school kids in, and 2 JUCOs, 2 transfers that could play right away, and then 4 freshmen. So it's kind of a hodgepodge group, but those guys, Ant and Jalen and Sim, they were awesome to coach as a first year coach.
All right, Coach. We'll see. We'll want to hear what you have to say about hiring staff. I know we got a lot of guys, assistants on here that obviously strive to be a head coach one day, and then a lot of younger guys that obviously looking to move up, be on staff. So when you go into your staff building mode, kind of what are some things you're looking for?
You hear all these years, you need to hire people, you need to fit this. And with me, it was more of a profile of each guy. And the first guy, I wasn't sure I wanted this job. I wasn't sure I wanted to leave my family. I had boys in high school. I loved the University of Florida. I loved working for Coach White. Loved our guys. So I wasn't anxious to take a head coaching job. I loved being an assistant. Thought it was great. But I also was worried if I didn't, that I may not ever be able to get one. And Kyle Church, who worked with us at La Tech, worked with us in Florida, he pretty much convinced me that I needed to do it and I'd be crazy. Now, I think it was a little bit self-serving because he knew I was going to bring him as an assistant because of how good he is. But having a guy that knows, I've always been a believer that as adults, even when guys I worked for would call to check on me, hey, Dusty, how you doing? How's the family? I'd say, Coach, I'm great every day. I appreciate so much working here. Every day I wake up and pinch myself. I'm a Division I assistant coach. Please don't ever call just to check on me. Call one of our players, call one of their parents, call somebody else. So I don't spend a lot of time. If I can help the staff get better, I don't check on them as far as like making sure they're working. It's not my personality. So having one guy that can kind of filter what I'm thinking when I'm frustrated, when there's just not enough time. So Kyle really knew everything we did and what my philosophies were and how I wanted to do things. So he's been invaluable. And then with the other guys, I wanted a diverse staff, and that didn't mean in our business diversity usually means black and white. Well, I wanted a female administrator. Now it didn't work out, but just guys who were a lot different than me. And so my first staff, so I brought Kyle and then Eric Pastrana, who I didn't really know. I knew him from the road, but he and I probably had 2 or 3 conversations outside of being on the road recruiting, but I really respected him, and he's a great guy, and he was aligned with everything that I thought the program needed. He fit a profile. He's strong in South Florida, a great dude, a good teacher. He had been a head coach at Daytona State, so he checked that box. And then Akeem Miskdeen, I'd never met, never spoken to him, but he was recommended by a guy I worked with, and so I just started calling him and really liked him and respected him, and this too, when you guys get your break and you call a guy and his boss says, hey, he'll be great for you, you probably didn't hire the right guy. Everyone I hired, their bosses fought to keep them. They were like, it was a battle where they tried to get them more money. They tried to do this. So that really says a lot about you too. I know this, if somebody called to hire one of my guys, I would fight like hell to keep them. And I think that says a lot about assistant coaches, that if you're head coach, Now, obviously, if the opportunity is so great, but if your head coach can just say, oh, yeah, he'll be great for you, you're probably hiring the wrong guy. You want the guys you're hiring, their bosses, to really fight to keep them and want to keep them, because that means they're valuable and they meant a lot to the program. But I wanted guys who complemented my weaknesses. Those guys, even I hired one of our managers from Florida to be our ops guy, and he's a machine. He's a robot. I hate compliance. I hate paperwork, and he handles all that kind of stuff. And he keeps the budget, all that stuff. He's a machine, and I don't have to think about any of that. Everything that needs to be done is already done. And then with the other administrator spot, we didn't keep a secretary. And so I just needed somebody that could run camps, could do a little bit of everything. I wanted a female for that spot, but it just didn't work out. So one of Billy Donovan's guys, Brandon Gilbert, we hired him. I'd never met him. So to be honest, I didn't know I knew, I guess, 2 of the 5 guys I hired, I knew. I wasn't worried about the loyalty piece. I wasn't worried about not knowing them, because I knew the people that spoke with them, they were great people, and they were like me, that they wanted to win and do things. I guess just from a character standpoint, they wanted to be around great people. They wanted to work hard, and they were driven. So I was never worried about knowing or the loyalty piece. I guess I just wasn't worried about that, because as people, I think as staff, we have to be able to connect with each other and get along with whomever, whenever. And when I worked for Coach White, no one knew who signed who. No one ever knew. We wouldn't let it get out. Unless you just saw me at a home visit or saw Coach Brown or Coach Jones at a home visit, you didn't even know who recruited our guys. We all said we recruited them, but it was the program that recruited them, and there was no ego. And Coach White always said, I'm never going to hold you guys accountable for signing guys, because a lot of times as assistant, you may have a guy on the line, and we were really good about this too, where we'd sit in a room and say, I love this kid. I've been recruiting him 2 years, but man, these guys better. He fits us better. Or like he's this, he's that. And that happened in every single staff meeting. And same thing at Florida with Jordan Mincy and Darius Nichols. We'd sit in rooms and Nice would say, man, this kid's good, but shoot, I think the guy Jordan's recruiting is better. Or like, this guy's good, but he doesn't fit us near as well. Or coach, he doesn't fit you near as well. So I think when you take the ego out of it and everyone's working together, because a lot of the ego in this business comes from recruiting, because assistants, that's the only thing you can really get known for now. I mean, other than maybe being a former head coach that has a niche as a zone, a great zone or a press coach, whatever the case, it's hard to get any, I guess, any publicity or any credit without recruiting. So I think when you take the ego piece out of recruiting and no one knows who's recruiting, then there's no animosity in trying to get playing time for certain guys or how it makes you look. Like when you're all in it together, I think it helps the staff work better together. And then self-motivated guys, I've said it, if I've got to beg you to work or this or that, and I've been lucky that all of our guys, they work, they enjoy working, they work, their families are important to them, but when they're not with their family, they're grinding, and it's every day. The last thing, likability. We spend so much time together. Man, if you can enjoy who you're around every day and you can laugh and be aligned and just enjoy their personality, it helps as well. Because that, like I said, we're really close friends, and that makes the job that much more rewarding, because there's highs and lows, ups and downs, and we all have to go through a lot of crap some days. So it helps if you're friends with the guys you're lining up going to war with.
Sure, that's good stuff. We got time for about two or so questions. If anyone has any couple questions for Coach.
Hey, Coach. Coach Perkins, Arlington's high school. Just to piggyback on some of your players, like during the ups and downs, bad practices, bad seasons, how do you keep them engaged, and how do you keep them focused and engaged and continue to work hard?
I think if you just let them see the light into the tunnel, and there's so many examples of guys you've coached that maybe didn't play as a freshman, maybe didn't play as a sophomore, that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And like I said, I really feel deep down that if guys are getting better, then they can tolerate the lack of playing time. And if you're spending time with them and you're investing with them, usually they'll trust you a little bit more. And when you tell them to be patient, they're not whispering obscenities under their breath. They're actually like trusting you to be patient, and good things will happen. But it comes down to spending the time with them and them really believing that you have their best interest at heart.
Coach May, this is Coach Ledoux, Miami-Dade College.
Coach.
I have a question about what is a transition? What do you see a transition from a junior college player to Division I level? If I were, obviously I'm a junior college coach, how can I improve their transition to make it easier for them as well as you?
You know, we've been a program that even at Louisiana Tech, I think we signed 4 JUCO guys, and they were all really good players. And at Florida, we brought one in, and he was a starter on Elite 18. Here, we brought in a couple, and it's just like high school kids. I don't think there's any one thing you can do to make junior college guys more prepared. Each kid's different. Some struggle with adjustment. Some high school kids come in right away, and they look like juniors. Some high school kids, you have high expectations. They come in, and you realize they're just not ready. So I think just the biggest adjustment for high school and junior college kids is the daily grind, the demands of Division I, of the weights, the film, the practice, the expectations of us, of you getting in and working on your game extra. Because there's a lot going on, especially at our campus. We tell our guys every single day, they get done with class about 5 o'clock, 5 or 6 every day. Usually they're done with tutors by 7. And at 7 p.m., there's a fork in the road. And to the left is the gym. And to the right is all those girls in tube tops and beaches and all that other kind of stuff. And you have to make a decision every single day. And, you know, the guys that have really improved are the ones that take that left turn, and the guys that have stayed stagnant took the right turn. But our guys, I really believe, know that we're there for them. And there's going to be an adjustment period with almost every junior college kid, every high school kid. And usually it just comes down to expectations. If we expect that, then we usually just keep it moving. Even with our guys this year, we had 2 guys that we were a little bit frustrated with, and they were probably frustrated with us. And when we looked at it after the season, it was just because of expectations. We thought they were going to have huge seasons, and they had good seasons. And they were a little frustrated. We were a little frustrated just because of expectations. So I think we're pretty realistic even with our freshmen. We don't expect them to come in and save the world. We just expect them to come in and really be sponges and work hard and be great teammates and learn, because we know they're talented, or we wouldn't have signed them.
Okay, thank you. Keep up the great job.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Yep.
All right, Coach Dusty, man, appreciate you, Coach, for coming on. Really enjoyed this time with you, and obviously I've known you kind of on the surface for a while, and just getting to really dive into your journey. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to share? And then if you want to leave any contact, you can drop it in the chat once we wrap up.
No, just let's you know, I think in college basketball we're at a time where all we hear is negativity, and I think that's at every level, and obviously with the finances of coronavirus, everything's going to change. But and every single day I wake up blessed that I'm able to wear the coach tag wherever it is. And usually whenever you just do the absolute best job you can and try the best you can be, good things happen. And like I said, I'm just blessed to be here. I'm excited to hear AB and Chris. Those guys are 2 great assistants. So, you know, just enjoying being on the platforms like this and learning and growing. And hopefully my story gives some people some hope, because like I said, I'm not supposed to be here.
Awesome. Well, Coach, again, I appreciate you really taking some time to share with us today and being with us. So, Coach May, I really appreciate you.
Hey, Dave, I'll put my contact information in the chat.
Perfect. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
So next up, we got Coach Alvin Brooks from Baylor University. Coach Brooks I've actually not known Coach Brooks very long, but I feel like I've gotten to know him over his Zoom panels that he's been in. He's actually kind of one of the ones that inspired me to start a panel. So, Coach, obviously, I really appreciate you doing that, and I'll let him talk more about that. But Coach Alvin Brooks from Baylor, go ahead, Coach.
First, I want to thank you, Coach Dave, and thank Rising Coaches for putting this on for us. I think during this time, this is big for us to have something to learn from and learn from each other. And so I want to thank you guys first. And like he said, I'm Alvin Brooks III. I'm an assistant men's Baylor University basketball coach. My journey is a little different. I'm a coach's son. And so I've been around the game pretty much my entire life. And so you would think that I always wanted to be a coach, but I didn't, because I seen what my dad was going through. And so my dad was the first African-American head coach of any sport at University of Houston. And so I had a chance to see the ups and downs of being a head coach at the age of 33. And he wasn't prepared when he became head coach. He had one scouting report his whole life before then. So my journey to this point has been totally different because of that. So I started off in junior college at Arkansas Fort Smith. I worked for Jeremy Cox, who is now at Stephen F. Austin. And so my first job was pretty blessed because I was able to learn a lot. I was able to do everything in junior college. It was just two assistants, me and Coach Holloway, who was on here. And so I had to do every single thing. And so that really, really helped me become the coach I am today. And we were blessed. We won a national championship after my second year. Then I went to Midland College, where I actually played the following year, and we won a national championship there. So I'm the only assistant to ever win back-to-back national championships at two different junior colleges. And so after that, I ended up going to Bradley University. And, you know, Coach May just talked about people helping you. After coming out back-to-back national championships, Jarence Howard, who's now the assistant coach at Kansas, he called me and asked me would I be interested in going to Bradley. And my initial reaction was, why are you not going? And he ended up being the guy that put me in contact with Bradley, and I actually went there and they offered me the job on the spot. And so that started off my Division I career. I was at Bradley for 3 years. We had 2 out of the 3 years postseason. Then I went to Sam Houston University, where I was there for 2 years to help Coach Jason Hooten. That was the beginning of his head coaching career, so I had a chance to learn from him and help build the foundation to where the program is now. Then from there, I went to Kansas State for 4 years. One unique thing about going to Kansas State was Coach Weber was just fired at Illinois. And so everybody was saying that, oh, he can't coach, he this and that, you know, because he got fired. And, you know, our first year, we actually won the Big 12 championship, and that was the first time in school history that has been done. And so having to learn from him and seeing what it takes to show, hey, I could still coach and sticking to the process that he's always done, I think that showed me exactly what I need to do to trust your process no matter where you're at. And I learned a lot from him. We had a lot of success at Kansas State in 4 years. After that, I came to Baylor. I've been at Baylor for 4 years. I've been blessed to learn from head coach Scott Drew and our staff. And we've had a lot of success in the 4 years. We've been number one in the country. Even this past season, we were number one in the country for the longest since 2015, since Kentucky. We actually won a Big 12 record 23 games in a row, and which is crazy now I say it, but, you know, just living in a moment. I think our guys and our staff did a great job of focusing on getting 1% better every day. And so that taught me a lesson about staying humble no matter what success you get. And then, you know, crazy part is I think after the 23 games, I think we may have lost 2 games after the 23 games, and everybody was like, oh, Baylor has lost 2 out of their last 3 or whatever. I'm like, are you serious? We just won 23 in a row, so I guess we're in a slump. But, you know, that taught me to not worry about the media, not worry about what people say. Biggest thing is just focus on what you're doing. And for me, you know, I've been blessed to coach in junior college, low major, mid major, and high major. So I have a perspective on all different levels and what it takes to win at all different levels.
Absolutely, Coach. And that's obviously a really good experience. Kind of talking about going back to you saying obviously being the son of a coach, kind of you hit on it a little bit, but how has that really kind of shaped you? And then have you had to fight sort of the, you know, I got to be Alvin Brooks III and not Alvin Brooks, you know, my dad. Have you ever had to fight that kind of label on you?
Being the son of a coach, I think traditionally, I think it comes with respect as far as people feel like you should know more or even be a better player than what you are. And so I've always lived that my entire life. I think I try to live up to my dad's expectations more as a player than a coach. And, you know, my dad was just inducted into Lamar University Hall of Fame as a player this past summer. And so my dad was a great player, so I've always heard growing up how great of a player he was. I mean, he was so good that he had a nickname called a Road Runner. So I'm guessing that he's fast because that's the cartoon I used to watch. He was really fast, Road Runner. But so I had a lot to live up to as far as, you know, how he carried himself as a player. And obviously he's been coaching for 30 years. So I feel like through his knowledge and him willing to share anything and everything with me, and he was at Texas A&M at the time that I decided I wanted to coach. And I actually called him and told him I wanted to coach, and he told me no, call me back in 2 weeks. And so when I called him back, instead of me starting at Texas A&M with him, and I actually had a chance to be a Division I assistant that year, he didn't allow me to. He had me start in junior college because he wanted me to be more than a coach. What I learned, I mean, more than a recruiter. What I learned is when you're in junior college, like you given a sheet of responsibilities, and your list of responsibilities starts from here and it goes all the way down. And, you know, as a young coach, I used to be like, man, this is a lot. Like, this may be too much. But then as you move up, and now that I'm at the high major list, like the list is like from here to probably here. So the higher that you move up, actually the less responsibilities you're given on paper. And so I think by me starting off in junior college, that helped me, because now I became more than just a recruiter.
Sure. Obviously, if anyone has any questions for Coach Brooks, obviously chime in, introduce yourself. But Coach, talking about you being on different levels, what have you learned from some of each level, junior college, the mid-major, and then obviously being in the Big 12?
First off, it's the people that you're around. So it doesn't matter what level you're at. You have to be surrounded by great people and talented people. I've been blessed to be surrounded by great people and talented people at every level. And so no matter how much resources you have, it's the people that's going to allow you to be successful. And so to me, that's the biggest thing more than anything else. I mean, obviously being at Baylor and K-State, we had a lot of money. We have a lot more money than when I was at Arkansas Fort Smith Junior College. And so able to win at both spots is only because of the talented staff and the talented and student athletes. So to me, it's the people more than anything. I tell recruits all the time, you know, you're going to go to places that may have better facilities than us. They may have better weight room, better this, better that, but you're not going to be successful unless the people that you're with, that you like the people, that they invest in you, and that they genuine, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Does anyone have any questions for Coach?
Hey, B, Darryl LeBerry.
Yes, sir.
Hey, can you touch base with everybody about in recruiting at the different levels? I guess the evaluation part is somewhat similar, but can you just kind of, I guess, touch base on the recruiting battles and how advanced and sophisticated recruiting can be depending on the level and depending on who you're recruiting against?
To me, it's kind of it's a little bit of the same everywhere, except the fact that, like, you know, like especially when I was at lower levels, anytime you're recruiting a kid and you're at the lower level, then you're watching them in July and you like, you don't want them to like play bad, but I mean, you don't
yes,
want
you do.
them to,
you do want them to play bad.
You don't want them to play too bad, but you know, you don't want them to like show everything in their bag. So you kind of like, you know, you watching and you like, all right, show my boss that you good enough, but don't show like everybody else that you too good. And so, you know, I remember when I was at Bradley, we recruited Iman Shumpert. We recruited Draymond Green. We recruited Eric Bledsoe and Damian Lillard. And it's crazy because Damian Lillard, like, he actually went to probably, you know, we was at Bradley, so we probably we didn't recruit him as hard though. And so if you look at like guys like that, like it was going to be hard for us to get Iman Shumpert and really hard for us to get Draymond Green. But I think that, you know, if the high majors make one call, then it just throw the kid mind to a whole different loop. And I see it now that I'm at Baylor. Like if a kid's getting recruited by mid-majors, and then if I make one phone call, it'll throw their mind off. And it's the same with us. We could be recruiting a kid, and if a blue blood call, it'll throw their mind off. And now they thinking like, you know, they don't know how serious it is. All it is one phone call, but they don't know how serious it is. So to me, it's kind of a pecking order as far as what's in people's mind. But I don't think they really understand the opportunity is all the same if they take advantage of it.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Hey, B. Jonathan Maddox, Morehead State. You talked about your dad getting the Houston job in his early 30s and him not being ready. What did you learn from that experience? Kind of how has that shaped your coaching career, and maybe tie that into obviously your own panel, which is called Be Ready. What all did you learn from that?
Man, I learned a lot. I learned, you know, first of all, as a head coach, I hadn't been a head coach yet, but one thing that I learned from him and that Jim Less, I work for Jim Less at Bradley University, is don't read your local newspaper. No matter how good you're doing, do not read your local newspaper. Because I remember reading the newspaper, don't let your kids read it if you got any control of it. Because I remember when my dad was the head coach, I would read the Houston Chronicle, and they talked about how great he was when he first got hired, how great he was. And then as, you know, year 4, year 5 come around, you know, they question everything he did. And then me being his son, I love him. So anytime I see something negative, it hit me hard. And so I would say that read those and people saying what he can't do motivated me, because I'm like, y'all don't understand why he hadn't done it yet. And like, they don't understand that he had 3 different ADs or 4 different ADs in his 5-year tenure. They moved up 2 different leagues during his 5-year tenure. So how you expect him to fight all that? But you know, that's not in the paper. The paper is worried about the results. And so obviously we know what it is. With the results, you either gotta win or, you know, you can. And, you know, watching my dad, man, he was 33 years old and he's 60 now. And he's been a part of a lot of winning programs between that time. And he hadn't got another opportunity yet. So that's why I really call it Be Ready, because when we had that opportunity, we got to be ready. And so if we're not ready and we're not prepared, like Coach Lanier said, then you never know if you'll ever get a chance. And so for me, I make sure that money, I don't care about money. Any coach call me and want to hire me, I turn down more money to come to Baylor. I'm about like being opportunity. Like I want to have a chance to impact recruit. I tell guys all the time, if you're looking for somebody to just recruit, then I'm not the assistant coach that you need to hire, because I want responsibilities to actually impact the program.
Coach Brooks, hey, Jordan Bailey, Washita Baptist. You know, we heard Coach May talk about his younger experiences in the video room and you know, as a manager and all that. And your early years were spent in JUCO. Can you kind of talk about how that JUCO experience has helped shape who you are now?
Yeah, and in junior college, I did video, I did managerial duties, I was the strength coach. I think in junior college you do everything, and so I had the opportunity to, you know, it's not really your title, but in junior college, because you don't have the necessary help, then you're forced to do all of it. And I think that helped, you know, for me. I even had to work a fitness center at like 4 a.m. And man, it's like I would show up at 4 a.m. and there'd actually be people outside waiting on me, like elderly people. And I'm like, man, so you got to be on time. And like I remember one day I was late, probably like 5 minutes. I overslept and my phone was ringing. I'm like, are y'all serious? But like, so it taught me like, no matter what time it is, you got to do it. And so driving the bus to games, you know, having that responsibility, just all the different things, and like learning budget. I've been blessed to be around coaches that have taught me more than just basketball. They taught me budget. They've taught me, you know, the ins and outs, and, you know, they've taken me around and introduced me to boosters and like showed me, you know, how to interact with every different person, and, you know, things to do, golf outings and things of that nature. So for me, that's helped shape me and help me as far as don't ever turn down an opportunity, no matter how bad you may think it be. Like you may be like, oh, I don't want to do that. Don't turn it down. Do it just to see how it's done. And then you'll learn how it's done. So now if you never do it again, at least you know how it's done. So when you have to teach it to maybe someone that you hire, you know how to teach it.
Coach Brooks, Jeremy Pope. Like, let's say you had a young student manager or a graduate assistant that you kind of looked after when he was at Baylor, and you kind of like his mentor, and he called you and said, Coach Brooks, I got a job. I popped it off. I'm about to get in these streets. Like, what are some truths and some honesty that you coupled to a few tidbits that you would give him, knowing that, like, that's your dude, but he about to get into the realness of this thing?
So what level is he going from
Division I.
From Baylor to Division I?
Yeah.
I would say, first of all, don't believe, you know, everything everyone says, in my opinion, especially in recruiting. Do your best and build as many genuine relationships as possible. Because if you build genuine relationships, then people will be more willing to help you. So I would say be genuine, but help others. So like if it's a player that you know you can't get, like call somebody and just tell them about them. And then I think things like that help you in the long run, because people will see that you're really trying to help them. And other than that, I would just say learn as much as you can learn. Be an addition to your head coach. I think that's one thing that's not like taught as much. Like it's gonna be other people, other parents. It's gonna be other players that may not. It's gonna be some things that the head coach do that you may not like. But at the end of the day, it's your job to protect that head coach. And you got to back that head coach up, whether you believe in it or not. I've been on staffs to where guys they say something totally different than what the head coach is saying, and you're not going to win. And so now if you don't win, it ain't going to be only your head coach's fault. It's going to be everyone's that's in the program fault. So always back the head coach, no matter whether you believe it or not. You got to figure out a way to get those kids to understand that it's about us and not them. And so to me, that's the biggest thing, is being an extension of the head coach, because at the end of the day, it's going to be Baylor University wins. It ain't going to be Scott Drew wins or Alvin Brooks III win or Jerome Tang win or John Jacobs win. It's Baylor. Like it's not one person. So you want to make sure that you do everything for that program.
Appreciate it.
Hey, one last thing, I don't mean to add, but like carry yourself in a way that people respect you as a head coach, you know, like as a future head coach. You know what I mean? Like the way you dress, the way you communicate, the way you present yourself, like all of that to me is huge as far as preparing yourself, not just for the job that you at, but for the job that you want. Be a star at the job you at, but you got to dress like you at your dream job. Talk like you at your dream job, but make sure that you take care of where you at.
Hey, B, what's up, man? It's Russ, Tennessee State.
What's up, Russ?
Hey, being on your panel that you've done with Be Ready, I can't help but notice the staff dynamic between you and Tang and how close you guys are and tight and amongst the entire staff. I just finished my 15th year Division I. Can you – and so I've worked with a bunch of different people as well. Can you touch about how important – you talked about it with the head coach, but we all have opinions. We're all in meetings, and I think we should do this. You think we should do this. About how important it is when you walk out of that meeting that everybody's unified, and talk about staff dynamic among assistants.
I think it's huge. I think it's big on as far as winning. As coaches, we want our players to buy in, and we want our players to play their role. But staffs is the same thing. In my opinion, I always say everybody has an ego. Everybody, all 80 people on here has an ego. But some of our egos are bigger than others. So how much can you control your ego for the betterment of the team? And so that's the same with staff. I think our staff is tremendous because we all know we have egos, but we all willing to sacrifice our egos for the betterment of the program. And so we argue in the meetings, like, we love each other. And like, we cool. We like, we families close, everything close, but we're in the meeting. And if I don't agree with something that Coach Tang said, then I'll say it. But I say it to his face. Like, we don't do it, like, we don't have the meeting after the meeting. Like, that's our goal, to never have a meeting after the meeting. When you have meetings after the meeting, then that's not a real genuine staff. So we have the meeting, we're gonna have adversity in the staff meeting, and we're gonna like talk to each other, but none of us ever take it personal. Like, we don't take it personal. And that's one thing that I commend Coach Tang on, because he's been at Baylor for 17 years, and he's our associate head coach, and he allows us to do that. And so for me, I think that's the reason why we've had a lot of success, is because we all are able to say our true opinions, and nobody takes it personal, no matter what it is. I hadn't been on many staffs. Actually, it's maybe the first staff I've ever been able to do that, though, because other places, people take it personal. But I think Coach Drew does a great job of making sure that we recruit together. We all watch, whoever scout it is, we all watch film. So if it's Coach Tang scout, I still have to watch 2 or 3 games. And so when we have our meeting, it's okay for me to say something because I know I've watched 2 or 3 games. Because everybody know I watched 2 or 3 games. Other places I've been, it's been territorial, like, hey, that's my scout. Why are you even talking about them? And so I think that's a big, big reason why we've had a lot of success, because Coach Drew has done a great job of making it a we staff thing.
Anyone else? Coach, I had one for you. Obviously, you guys at Baylor coach a lot of pros, guys either going overseas or to the NBA. How do you guys get them to buy into the team and know the individual stuff will come with the team success?
Man, that's a daily grind. Daily, a lot of talks. We go, one thing that we do different that any place I've ever been is we eat with them one-on-one. And so I remember my first month on the job, Coach Drew came up to me in my office and he said, hey, I need you to eat with every single player before we start practice. And I was like, eat with every player? I had never been anywhere you could do that. And so by us eating with the players all the time and building that relationship with them, it becomes easier for us to talk about playing time and easier for us to talk about us instead of you, because we had a relationship with them. And so to me, that's the hardest thing to do. But, relationships is everything. And so we build a great relationship to show. And I think that's why we've only had a 16% transfer rate, because we actually tell them the whole time, what's the reality, because everybody's expectations are different. And most people's expectations are too much. And so we always tell them reality. And at the end of the day, they don't transfer because of that.
AB, outside of having really good players this year, what attributes do you think made the team so cohesive and play so well together?
This is one of the first teams I've been a part of to where, like, they compete and stretching, and in a good way. Like, they laughed and joked and compete and stretching, and like everybody, they bought into their role. I think Mark Vital and Freddie Gillespie, they was tremendous in the fact to where they were so huge to our team, but they never cared about attention, and it trickled down. It trickled all the way down. And so obviously Jared Butler, great player for us. And so he got a lot of the attention, but he never acted like he was the best player. Like, he came every day And, no matter the attention, he worked hard. Same with Maceo Teague. Same with Davion Mitchell. Same with, every single body. Devontae Bandu was a senior that came off the bench for us as a senior. And by him, buying into that role, he actually became the sixth man of the year in the Big 12. So I think they seen that it was a bigger than just them. And I think going to Italy actually helped us because they didn't have a chance to just use their phone the whole time. So they actually had a chance to build a relationship with one another.
Appreciate it.
Coach AB, how you doing? James Alexander, Kentucky Hoop Dreams AAU. I've taken a lot of my guys to unofficial visits and been around the high major, mid-major, and low major. And there's certain things that they track to try to build that camaraderie in the locker room. So like the leading in charges or the assist makers or the best teammates. What are some things you guys do at Baylor to try to build that camaraderie for the guys that have different roles and just being the best scorer or the assist or the leader?
That's a great question. One thing that we track that most teams don't is body language. And so we actually have a body language chart. And I'm big on body language, like huge on body language. So we have 4 different categories that we use for the body language chart. And so we have the 2 positive categories are beast mode. And so beast mode is, when if a kid make a big play and they scream or flex or whatever, so we call that beast mode. Then we have cold greens. Cold greens, if I hit you, if I pass the ball to you, Coach Alexander, and you hit a 3, then we both need to either point at each other or as we run it down the court, if we got time, high five each other. But we both better acknowledge each other that you got me an assist and that you got a 3. And so we track that. And then the 2 negatives are cold blues, is what we call cold blue. Cold blue is if you're bending over and holding your knees, showing that you're tired, we count that as a negative. And then cold red is when you're frustrated. And so it's like, red is like anger when you're mad. So if a cold red is if I throw you the ball, Coach Alexander, and you drop the ball and I do like this, it ain't my fault and I'm going at you, then we count that as a cold red. And so at the end of the day, you have to have more positives than negatives. So we add the 2 positives up and we divide them by the 2 negatives. And you have to be over a 3 or higher. If not, then the next day you have some random with the strength coach, whatever he wants. And so that really helps us because even during practice, if we see it, we'll say something. And so now we're building that habit of that it's more about us than just you. I mean, like the Golden State Warriors did a study, and the more you touch, the better your team will be just because everybody else is worried about somebody else and not about yourself.
Thank you. And you answered my second question too, because you just track it during the game, correct? Not in practice.
Yeah, we track it in the game, but like in practice, I actually watch it. And so I'll show clips in practice the next day in film if we had opportunities to have a cold green, which is acknowledging your teammate. And I'll say, all right, why we do this? Or we'll have somebody hit a game winner in practice and everybody else just walk off like it's no big deal. We'll say, all right, what you would have done if it was 10,000 people in the stands? How would you have ran around? So why not do it now to make your teammate feel good to hit a game winner? And so we really focus on in practice to build that habit.
What's up, Coach AB? Manny from Orangeville.
What's up, Coach?
You guys are obviously one of the best defensive teams in the country this year. May you speak a little bit about that? Obviously you guys' philosophies were a little different from what, most people are used to seeing from Baylor. May you speak on that and how much time you guys spent each day on practice and how you guys got your guys to buy in on that end of the floor?
Coach Tang and I was in charge of defense. And so it was definitely Coach Drew after this season. After last season, Coach Drew came in the staff meeting. He said, all right, let's go from good to great. And so we studied Texas Tech. As a staff, we studied Texas Tech defense and we studied Virginia's defense. And so as a staff, it was our job to figure out what fits us best. And so we, broke it down, figured out what fits our personnel best. And we actually started working on it because we were going to Italy. It gave us a head start to practice it against the teams in Italy. And we first started, our guys did not like it. They did not like it at all because it was a big change for us to go from, playing 50% man, 50% zone, and now we playing all man, and it's a different style. So they didn't, it took them a while to adjust. But after a while, when we do breakdown, Coach Tank and I are always on the defensive side. And so we just, every day, we just break it down. Like we started off just teaching the techniques, and then we slowly built up to, technique. All right, now let's go faster. And so after a while, we taught the different rotations, and we just taught, how to guard without fouling. And then we had some special defenders that already, was elite at defending, and just teaching them how we want to do it. I mean, it definitely was a big reason why we were top 5 defense in the country.
Hey, one question, Cody Topper here with Memphis. You guys being on the defensive side of the ball, do you guys have it separated like you two guys are on defense, you and Tang, and then the others are on offense, and kind of how are you guys doing that? Is that similar to like the NBA model, or how are you guys kind of organized?
Yeah, so in practice, when we do breakdown, when we do offense and defense, we go 5-on-0 on one side, and it's Coach Jacobs and Coach Drew, and they doing 5-on-0 on one side offensively, and then Coach Tang and I are on the other side doing defense. And so, depending on whether we have a game coming up or not, then we'll just, if it's preseason, then we're just doing everything that we want to do as far as teaching different actions, how we're going to guard different actions, how we're going to keep the ball screen coverage, whether it's in the middle, the seams, or the side, and we kind of, how we want to guard cross screens, just the basic principles. And then, of course, during scouts, then we want to change a few things, then we'll do it during those times before we go full speed.
And is Coach Drew like kind of floating back and forth a little bit on that? And was this the first year that you guys did that?
No, Coach Drew is the more of an offensive coach.
So he's D'Antoni. I got you.
Yeah, he'll tell you. He's more offensive coach. So when we go 5-on-0, he's on his side with Coach Jacobs, and they're doing offense. And Coach Jacobs kind of stand in the middle, and he'll look back and forth. And he'll basically, he'll help more with the offense, but he'll occasionally look back and forth and say something if he sees something that we don't see. But Coach Tang and I basically over there on defense, just doing whatever. He told us to do whatever. We got 15 minutes, or we got whatever amount of minutes. He said, do whatever you want, so you have no excuses. So we take advantage of it.
And this was something new, right? Or is this something you guys?
Yeah, this is the first year. This is the first year, and I think something that could teach everybody on here is Coach Drew has had a lot of success. He's the all-time winningest coach in Baylor history already. And so he talked to Sweeney and this summer, and Dabo Sweeney kind of told him about, staff, giving your staff a little bit more to do. And this was the first year that he allowed Coach Tang to do subs. And so Coach Tang did defensive subs. And so at the beginning of the year, I thought it really transformed our defense, because if you got beat middle, we took you right out, no matter who you were. I don't care how good you were. And so that freedom, it allowed Coach Drew to focus on just the game. And then it allowed Coach Drew to just worry about what he's doing. And then Coach Tang and I sat on the bench, and sometimes I'll say, Coach Tang, get him out. And then it became competitive where the players, they were paying attention to defense, and now they'll be like, oh, he got beat middle. Now, just so they could get in the game. Now when they get in the game, they making sure that they do everything right. And that helped us to be what we were, because they really bought into it because they wanted to stay in the game.
Yeah, I like that way too, where you separate it on both sides, and that's like more like an NBA mindset, like as far as like delegating down to the staff. That's awesome.
Yeah, Coach Drew, Dabo Sweeney talked to Coach Drew this summer, and I think, he said he wanted to go good to great, and for him to make that change, man, it taught me a lot, as far as no matter how successful you are, you can always go to another level.
Coach Jeremy again. Just to kind of top on what Coach Topper's talking about. So when you guys did that though, like when it got real, like in the end of the game, was it more of a like everybody understood, like, all right, well, Jared got beat or Davion got beat, like I know he got beat, but he not coming out. Like, was it kind of like just understanding at the end of the day, or was it irregardless of if you get beat middle, like you getting pulled?
No, I think especially at the end of the game, our guys locked in because they didn't want to lose. Like we had guys that didn't want to lose. I remember being like in timeouts. I won't say the schools, but being in timeouts in hostile environments, and they like screaming at each other saying, "We better than them. We not losing this. We better than them." And so like they were locked in. Like we had a special group, so we didn't have to worry about taking them out at the end of the game because we knew that they were going to execute. But I'm sure, obviously if Davion gets beat on one play at the end of the game and there's 1 minute left, we not taking him out. So yeah, I'm just gonna be honest. Like he's too important for us to do that. That's one that we may be like, somebody say, "Oh, he got beat." That's one you'd be like, "Oh, he did? When?"
Coach AB, Blake Harris, EKU. Just curious so obviously I changed it up a little bit this past year. What's something that you all would have changed, I guess, in the process of going into it like a different system? Like I know you said that it wasn't easy with the players, obviously changing the entire system, but what's something that you all could have changed to make it a little bit more smooth for the players, I guess, quicker?
I mean, I don't know if I would have changed anything just because of I think especially when you're changing a whole different defense, I think they need to learn how to do it more than just going fast and doing it wrong. So I thought we did a good job of just pacing it out. And obviously, if we didn't go to Italy, we probably would have to do something different. But because we went to Italy and played 4 games, we had a chance to practice it against someone else. And so I think that gave our guys confidence because they seen like, all right, this actually may work because these guys didn't know what we're doing and it was hard for them to score. And so, in practice, our guys knew what we were trying to do. So of course, like every team, they cheat the drill. And so we wanted to make sure that they seen that it actually works against other competition before the season starts. So if we didn't go to Italy, I think the first 2 scrimmages that we would have had would have been very, very important as far as making sure that our guys see that it works.
Thank you. Also, was it hard to get them locked in on it? The scrimmages in Italy, but like I guess before that, was it kind of harder? I guess until you got to those games in Italy, did they kind of see like was it around that time that they finally understood that it's actually going to work?
Yeah, I think Italy was a little bit for them to see how it's going to work. I don't think they feel like the competition was great, and so I think they probably thought anything would have worked against them. I think like the first scrimmages we scrimmaged LSU. I think when they seen that they have the opportunity against LSU because they have great guards, they had great guards. I think them seeing it against them and like showing film already when we do it correctly, it works. I think that really took the toll because now they're seeing, all right, if we do it right, it works. But we show a lot of times when we didn't do it right and we went to, doing what we want to do, then we got burned. And so I thought us showing the process of that really helped us.
You guys had a ton of success with the man-to-man this year, but also you had a ton of success with the zone in years prior. So is it going to be like kind of a year-to-year evaluation on what the defensive scheme will be, or you guys were so good this year, you're just going to stay with what you did this year?
I think it depends on personnel. I think this past year it made more sense for us to play man because of our personnel. In the past, we've had, a 6'9" 4-man and a 3-man that's like 6'7". So it's easy to play zone because now how you going to get it to the corner? I remember when I was at Kansas State and we played Baylor and they had Isaiah Austin in the middle. He's 7 foot. They had Corey Jefferson on the wing. He like 6'11". And then they had Torian Prince on the opposite wing. He like 6'7", 6'8". And our players looking at me, it was my scout. They looking at me like, how we going to get the ball to the corner? And I'm like, I don't know. Figure it out. So obviously, if we able to recruit and get big wings like that, then we'll do more, probably 50-50. But I mean, with Mark Vital, Mark Vital played the 4 for us. He's 6'5", and his best attribute is man-to-man defense. By it don't make sense for us to put him in a zone. And Davion Mitchell, who's probably the best on-ball defender in the country.
Al, you can hear me?
Q, yeah, I can hear you.
How hard was it, man, to keep you guys had an outstanding season, man. How hard was it for you guys to, like, going into the next game to keep those guys going? Especially like when y'all was making your run. I don't know what it was, man. I know y'all was undefeated. Y'all was number 1 for a long time. How hard was it to keep those guys motivated going into like the next game? What did you guys do?
Crazy, man. We would always reporters would help us out so much. Reporters always said, "Oh, they're gonna lose this next one," and so it was easy because we were like, "All right, cool." So we put it on the big screen, and we had some competitive dudes to where like if you say they gonna lose, oh, that's like motivation for them. And so it was easy as far as the game. I think the hardest thing was like everybody in their inner circle was telling them that they need more. They need more. Like, even though we were winning and we're number 1 in the country, we were still having to talk to guys about, it's working. Like, just stick with it. Like, everybody at the end of the day, we keep winning. Everybody's going to get, some kind of award or something at the end of the season. So for us, that was the hardest thing, just to, even though we were winning, the hardest thing was just like keeping everybody on the same page as far as just continue to do what you're doing.
AB, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, it's Middlebrooks in LA. Hey, what do you think you guys are going to have to do to manage expectations going in the next season, having had such a great season to see you laughing? How are you guys going to do that? Do you have a strategy?
Man, no, not yet. We don't have a strategy yet. I think the biggest thing is, first of all, we got to see. We have 2 guys testing the water, so obviously we don't know if both of them coming back or both of them leaving or one coming back. So that'll have a lot to do with it. And so I think the biggest thing is, there's going to be a lot of NBA guys telling our guys what they need to do to get to the next level. And so now it's going to be up to us to make sure that whatever it is, it benefits Baylor and not just them. And so, we know that's going to be the biggest challenge for us. And so, Coach Drew is great at figuring out ways to get everybody to buy in. So we'll come up with it as a staff and make sure that, they still understand that it don't matter if we lose, none of them going to get what they want. So we're going to have to win in order for them to get what they want. And so that's going to be the biggest thing, is to make sure that we win.
Gotcha.
Coach, Travis Lewis, Toledo St. Francis. In the past, you guys played all zone. How much more difficult was it from a scout report standpoint, and how much more information did you get of players going man as far as other players' tendencies and cues and just the defensive mindset change up going into games in a man-to-man format instead of a zone format?
As a staff, for me, I can speak for myself, but for me personally, it was easier for me because when we played both, I had to, we have to know they zone plays and they man plays on what they want to run the most. So now you got to know both. And so for me, it's easier for me to teach because I've always been a part of teams that's man to man. And so I don't think it was tough for our players, just because we don't do our scouting is really simple. Like Coach Drew, we don't go over 30 plays. We don't do that. He's big on going over what they do the most, and we focus on what they do the most, and then we just try to take it away. And then after that, everything else is just, just natural reaction. And so, like a player like Quantas, we would just say, hey, let him shoot. So we just back off of him. No, I'll just joke. Quantas is my college teammate. I had to give him a hard time. Now, everybody know he could hoop. He led Oklahoma to the Final Four. We all know that. But we'll make it to where like our guys understand. So like, I've been at places to where I used to like name every single thing a guy did, and now when the players get in the game, it's like they brain stuck. When I got to Baylor, they was like, are you doing this for you or are you doing it for them? And so now it transformed my mind. So now we keep it simple. So now if a big is at the top of the key with a point guard, we made it simple enough to where they know how to stop them.
How long is the scouting report?
It depends, man. It depends on we want to keep it short, but when it's your scout, you want to make sure that you don't leave no stone unturned. So sometimes it could be too long, in my opinion. I'm even speaking for myself too. Sometimes I think we want to show the guys too much, and so we try to do 15 minutes, if that, under 15 minutes. But Coach Tang sometimes hit the space bar quite a bit, and so it could turn from 15 minutes to who knows.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
We got time for maybe one more if someone has a question. Anyone?
I did that great of a job. Nobody have a question.
You left no stone unturned.
I have a question.
Hey, Al.
I'm going to say, I know Tang wants something to say.
Yeah. Hey, having been at different places and working for different coaches, there's a different way to like get your information across. Can you talk about how you, when you have an idea, how you, because of your finance background and knowing Coach Drew's mind, how you get information to Coach that allows him to understand? Because everybody receives things differently. You do a great job with that with Coach. Can you share about that?
Yep. So every head coach is different. And so what I learned about Coach Drew is, like, you're not just going to tell him this works. You have to show him that it works. And you got to show him with numbers. Like, Coach Drew is big on numbers. If the numbers don't add up, you have no case with Coach Drew. And so my first year, I learned that the hard way. I would always talk to him about stuff that, we've done at other places, and he'll listen. He'll be respectful enough to listen. But if you don't have numbers, he's not changing. And so what I learned is, like, the body language thing, I felt like that's something that could help our program to me, it produced toughness and it helps you overcome adversity. And so instead of me, like, telling Coach Drew about it, I went to his office and we actually figured it out together, and we made it a numbering system. So now Coach Drew don't have to worry about our guys' body language because it's a number. And so that's one less thing as a head coach you have to worry about. And so if a kid is going, like, reacting wrong, then we just say, hey, no co-reds. And so, like, just a word and numbers is, like, helped us tremendously with Coach Drew. And Coach Drew has taught me a lot as far as numbers, because numbers take the emotions out of things. And so now when you're meeting with a kid, you're not reacting off emotions. You're actually showing them, what it is. And numbers don't, for the most part, numbers don't lie. And so I think that's something that's really helped me with Coach Drew is, figuring out what numbers are important. And I think a lot of numbers translate into winning basketball games. Like Landry Fields said the other day on our panel, he said, you can't change what you can't see. And so if you don't have the numbers, you can't see the numbers to help your program change, then you're not going to see it. And so I think Coach Drew does a great job of showing us numbers. And when he showed us Texas Tech and Virginia's defensive numbers, as a staff, that made our mindset change, because I'll be honest, I didn't want to change. I was like, why are we studying they defenses? I didn't want to change, but seeing their numbers, you're like, okay, if their numbers are like this year in and year out, then what are they doing so good to make their numbers, their defensive numbers like this? And so, obviously, looking at our defensive numbers this past year, it definitely worked.
All right, Coach Brooks, I appreciate you coming on. You got any kind of closing remarks? And then obviously, if you want to mention Be Ready at all, I'm gonna add in one thing. If I'm guarding Quanez White, not only am I letting him shoot, he ain't blowing past anybody. So, but yeah, if you want to have any closing thoughts, and then obviously if you want to mention what you've done with Be Ready, which has been incredible.
Man, my closing thoughts, I would just say, I think right now is a great opportunity it's a tough time right now as far as what's going on. I actually have family members fighting the virus. But this actually has been something that has changed, I think, people's mindset. I think it's been more coaches I know that's willing to help each other more than I can ever remember personally. And so I think take advantage of this time to go on any platform that you can and learn as much as you can. And so, Coach Dave talked about it. We started a Be Ready, and it's every Wednesday, every Saturday night at 8 p.m. And so we help each other tremendously every night. And so it's different speakers on. Like tomorrow night, we'll have two head coaches. One is Division I head coach, and one is a professional head coach. And so it'll be more X's and O's probably tomorrow, but every night is something different. We've had mental health coach on there. We've had, a little bit of ADs, associate ADs, search firms. And so anything that you could do to help yourself become better, like we have no excuse. Like I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. Like I've been hearing them in the background the whole time. But there's no excuse not to get better right now. And for you young coaches, one financial advice, since I do have a finance degree and I don't use it, I would say when you're young, do not buy a condo, a house. Don't buy. Just because when you're young, you're more likely to move around and you don't want to have to foreclose like I did. I was young. When I first got to Bradley, I went from making $25,000 in junior college to $50,000 at Bradley, and I thought I hit the lottery. And so I went and bought a condo just because it's snow, and I wanted my car to be inside in the garage because I don't like snow. And so I wanted to be inside, and because of that, I made a bad financial decision. So when I ended up going from Bradley to Sam Houston, I was paying for an apartment at Sam Houston and trying to pay for the condo. And even though I rented it out, it wasn't, I couldn't survive it. And so I ended up foreclosing. So when you're young, don't buy. As you grow and you have a family with kids, then it's a great investment. But when you're young and moving around, just rent, take your time, rent, and then it'll definitely pay off for you in the long run.
Cool. Well, Coach Brooks, like I said, I really appreciate you. And obviously I have a gratitude for you for starting Be Ready, which inspired, obviously, one, helped me get better, but two, to inspire me to start a panel as well. So I thank you, one, for coming on, and two, for your heart and helping people start Be Ready.
Thank you, Coach Dave. Thanks for having me on. This is a great thing that you're doing. And I'm definitely looking forward to staying on and listening. And I'll put my contact information in the chat also.
Awesome. Perfect. So next up, we got Coach Chris Kreider, assistant coach at Georgia State. He's been kind of been around to a lot of places. And so obviously I'll let him get into his journey and some things he wants to share. So Coach Kreider, go ahead.
Dave, thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate this opportunity. Great platform. I enjoyed the last couple that you did, learned a lot myself. But you set me up, man. You put me after these two high-level guys. It's going to be hard to follow this. But no, I just wanted to start out, been doing this. It's hard to believe, going into my 19th year of coaching. different levels. Journey's been a little different, kind of like Coach May was talking about. A lot of what he said resonated with me. But wanted to start out before talking about my journey, just my current situation here at Georgia State, working for Coach Lanier, who I know he's been on AB's, Be Ready deal there, and just the best. Learning so much from him. We're all learning right now during this pandemic in all these forums. But for me as an assistant coach, every day is a coaching clinic for me. Just really learning a lot from him and our staff. Cliff Warren, veteran guy, been in the game a long time, all-time winningest coach at Jacksonville University, and Jarvis Hayes, first-round draft pick, NBA player. So really good staff, and really, what we've done in 1 year is trying to chase what they're doing at Baylor. That staff chemistry, I really love our chemistry here, and have learned so much from these guys, the other assistants that I'm working with. So, like Coach May was saying, in my journey, I really value those relationships, guys I've worked for, work with, and I think that's what it's all about. But just specifically here, Coach Lanier is one of the humblest dudes I've ever worked for, and that one thing, I can't remember who said it the other day. Somebody recommended this Flying Coach podcast. It's called. It's Steve Kerr and Pete Carroll doing this podcast, and Steve Kerr said something today that was very interesting. It just made me think of Coach. He was talking about Coach Popovich, and he said you could just feel his humility. And I just think that's what I've learned in 1 year here with Coach Lanier. And that's one thing that just, I think as coaches here on this, reflecting on where we're at and what we're doing and why we coach, humility is something that I've really, picked up from Coach. And I always knew it was important, but seeing it lived out has been really, really cool. Before I get into the journey, I think Coach May was saying too, just, sometimes in coaching, we take for granted, how hard this thing really is. Especially at the Division I level as an assistant coach. Coach Lanier talks about how hard it is to get a head coaching job. 353 opportunities, and it's like winning the lottery. Well, as an assistant coach, before I got into this, I was naive, I'll admit it. I didn't know what it entailed. Just got into coaching, kind of went with it. But at the end of the day, I think if we remember, you're looking at a little over 1,000 Division I assistant opportunities. That thing's hard. And, so I think as aspiring coaches, current coaches, whatever level we're at, just remembering how hard this thing is and how we're doing it for all the same reasons. We love people. We want to give back. We want to make a difference using this game of basketball. But I think sometimes you get so busy recruiting, scheduling, checking on your guys, like you just forget about, just how hard this thing is. But my experience, a little different, a little unique, but I think just for me, it kind of, every spring I try to do it so I don't forget, because, I do have a bad memory, but every year you learn things and you look back at previous years and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So I started out, I played Division III basketball in Pennsylvania, Lebanon Valley College. Mike Rhodes played there, JD Byers, who works with him there. It's a basketball Division III school. I wasn't very good. I tried to play, but I played, and then I got into coaching. I lived with my high school coach growing up because my parents were missionaries, and grew up in Colombia, South America. So that helped me do something that's kind of come in handy. I learned Spanish. That would come in handy later in my journey. But so I lived with my high school coach, and that kind of got the wheels turning as far as wanting to get into coaching. But did the whole thing back then. It was working camps, so traveled around the country working camps, and finally had an opportunity work UCLA's camp. Met a guy named Matt Genesee. His dad was the head coach at the University of Great Falls, an NAIA school in Montana. So did that for a year, and then after that year, I had to make a decision. My current wife now, Heather, lived in Atlanta. And so for me, it was after that opportunity, we got let go. I had to go. I was going back home, or I was going to try to start this relationship with my wife. And I did that. I moved to Atlanta, not knowing what was next, and did some crazy things. One story that's kind of cool is had to wait tables, Copeland's on Cobb Parkway. I waited tables, and one story that's really unique looking back, and this is kind of the beauty of these journeys, is I went to wait on a table. I walked up, and it was Coach Warren, Cliff Warren, who I now work with. And I had met him coming up playing AAU. He was an assistant at Mount St. Mary's. he helped me get an opportunity at Georgia Tech eventually to work camp, which led me to some other opportunities there. So just, something so crazy as that, waiting tables and meeting Coach Warren again. And so ended up getting a job at St. Francis High School here in Atlanta. Was a high school coach for 3 years, coached JV boys, coached varsity girls, and coached varsity boys. That was a great opportunity. Got to realize what I didn't know. And, had some early head coaching responsibilities that I wish I could go back and do some things differently, obviously. But then it was kind of like, okay, let me try to get into college. So a funny story there, go to, help one of my current high school players, just see Division II basketball. So went to a Peach Belt game and was watching the game and, obviously wanted him to kind of see what that level was like. But Vince Alexander was coaching one of the teams, the opponent of the team we went to see. We went to North Georgia, and he was coaching USC Aiken at the time. And after the game, I just happened to say, hey, Coach, if you ever need an assistant, I'd love to do it. He's like, funny you ask. Yeah, come on, man. If you want to volunteer, come volunteer. So for me, that's how it started in college. I had to volunteer for a year, and that's where Spanish came in handy because I had to find a job. My wife, kind of like Coach May was saying, I couldn't have done this without her. She's really been supportive and helped from a financial standpoint, but I had to do something too. So I taught middle school Spanish in Augusta, Georgia, and then drove 30 minutes to Aiken every day, for practice. So I did that for a year and loved it, learned a lot. Coach Alexander, basically let me be an assistant coach on a volunteer basis. And so then I wanted to try the Division I thing. So that's where Coach Warren helped me over the years connect with some people at Georgia Tech. And so worked camp there, got to know some people there. And it came down to a situation where there was a GA opportunity. Coach Hewitt was looking to hire, went after it, didn't get it, but I could kind of sense that I was maybe like one of 3 or 4. So he ended up giving it to Anthony McHenry, which was a great decision on his part, former player. And so I just, for whatever reason, I walked up to him in the middle of camp one day and I was just like, Coach, if you need anything, I'd love to volunteer. And he was just like, cool, sounds good. And kept it moving. But I thought basically that was a yes. So did that, lived here in Atlanta, had to find something to do, taught high school Spanish at Mount Pisgah High School here in Atlanta and volunteered there. But I say that just, he didn't have to give me that opportunity and I'm thankful for that. So echoing Coach May again, just in this journey, so many people looking back, they give you opportunities that you don't know why. And so just constantly staying appreciative for those, is really what it's about, in my opinion. So did that for a year on a volunteer basis. So that's back-to-back years volunteering. Just knew I wanted to try to keep going. And I think the longer I stay in it, that's what it is. You just try to stay in. And so he had a secretary leave and he was trying to fill the position. And I owe John O'Connor, who used to work for him at Georgia Tech, again, because he could have hired another secretary, just kind of keep that thing moving. He was like, yo, why don't you just move Chris over there? So he did. He allowed me to sit behind a desk and answer phones and do the admin thing for a year. But that 1 year, I learned so much, on that staff. You had John O'Connor, Peter Zaharis, the one and only CY, who a lot of us know. So I got to sit back with no pressure and kind of see that level and learn so much. So that was a great opportunity. So I did two years at Georgia Tech, learned a lot, had never seen that level before, and it was great. And so it's at this time when I start really figuring out how this business works. We talk to our players all the time about, learning the game and logging the game. And I think for us as coaches, we have to learn the business and we have to log the business. And so I was starting to really kind of see how this thing goes. So, if I look back on all my assistant coaching jobs, I've interviewed one time. So this was the first example where I didn't interview, and CY taught me this. He says, you're always being evaluated. Every day is an interview. So he gets the job at Georgia Southern, his alma mater, and he was just like, yo, you want to go? And that was it. And I was like, let me talk to Heather. Heather was, from Georgia, from here in Atlanta. She's like, yeah, let's do it. So went down there to Georgia Southern, was there 2 years, but just one thing looking back, and this is why I write stuff down because I can't remember. But like I was on the job with CY, which was incredible. The stuff that I learned, I had to write that down too, because just talking about CY real quick, like there's only one, and I've never learned so much, especially recruiting, but everything. You know, he went through, you know, the year 1 and year 2, learning and watching him, you know, just get that opportunity as a CEO. But just the recruiting stuff I learned from him, I mean, everything that I learned was from Coach Hewitt and CY when it comes to recruiting, 2 of the best, you know, in my opinion. But we were there on the job. We took a leap of faith. There was a little bit of a pay cut. He came up to me like a weekend. He's like, yo, congratulations, you're getting a raise. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was basically able to move some money around based on hiring decisions. And so financially, it was going to be tough for us to do it as is. So that one thing to me, you know, for me, faith, family, friends, my faith is what it's really about. I know that God's opened these doors, but that's one huge thing that I think we would have really struggled. And, you know, he helped me out, you know, just with that one thing. And I know that was God, you know, helping provide for our family. But did 2 years at Southern, learned a lot. Great staff, Steve Smith, Persian Williams, Eric Podell, just loved my 2 years there. And then Coach Hewitt, you know, had the opportunity at George Mason, and same thing, didn't interview. He just called, hey, do you want to come up? So was there with Coach Hewitt at George Mason for 4 years, unbelievable 4 years. I had seen Coach Hewitt and just the job he's done. You know, he did at Georgia Tech from a desk as an administrative guy, but working for him as an assistant coach and the staff he put together there. You know, Eric Skeeter's current head coach, Roland Houston, legend, Mike Wells, who's an assistant with the Jazz right now. And then me as just a young guy tagging along, watching these guys. And that's what I've always tried to do personally, just because of, I guess, how I came up. I've always tried to just sit back. A lot of it's my personality maybe, but I like to sit back and learn and watch and just listen. I've always found that that's the way, for me, that's the way that works. I think as coaches, if we try to be any other way or be anyone else and do it any other way, I think you end up failing. Our guys are going to see through it. Staff members are going to see through it. So, you know, just for me, I had a chance to learn from some really good coaches at George Mason. We had 2 great years to start off in the CAA, won 20 games. And then we switched to the Atlantic 10, and that was a challenge. And we ended up getting let go. And another experience, you know, just for me, and I think has shaped me. You know, when you get let go, you learn a lot. The biggest thing, you know, I learned is just a constant reminder of what this whole thing's really about. You know, when you put in 4 years somewhere and you build the relationships and you do it the right way, and it's thanks for coming. That's it. And so if we as coaches put too much and lose track of what's really important, I think that's where we get messed up. So getting let go was a great reminder for me, but it was also challenging. My wife and I, we were pregnant, or she was pregnant with Livia, you know, who's now about to be 5. So at the time, no job, try to figure out where to move to, try to figure out stay in the business or not. So I went after, I don't know, 20, 30 jobs, didn't get any of them. And just another great reminder of how this business really works. And get a call one day from a college assistant of mine from Lebanon Valley. And he was just like, hey, my college teammate, Dan Earl at VMI just got the job. He's having a hard time finishing his staff. Do you want to talk to him? Long story short, that was the first time I'd ever really interviewed. And that was, as of today, that's the only time I've really interviewed for an assistant coaching job. And it just shows how this business is. And just the value of just trying to do the right thing, work as hard as you can. Like, you know, all these guys, you know, everybody that we've heard talk these last few weeks about, you know, just it reinforced that for me. So went to VMI, awesome opportunity, had never seen the military up close and personal like that at a school like that. Learned so much about recruiting at VMI. You know, obviously you have the academic criteria, but you have the military component. So for me, in my journey as an assistant coach, not only was I working for a ridiculously good coach in Dan Earl, but also just learning about recruiting, how to cast a big net and how to always think ahead and have not A and B and C, but D, E, F, G, H, and keep it going at a place like that. So spent 2 years at VMI, loved it. And then I had known Scott Para, who just got the job when Coach Rhodes went to VCU from at Rice. So when he got the job, he was a high school coach in my hometown, and we used to play against his teams, and he used to come over to our gym for open gym. So, that was an opportunity that, looking back on it, he didn't have to hire me, but he did, and I owe him a lot for it. And another great opportunity at Rice, high academic, first opportunity to see that level of academics and what goes into the recruiting process there. It's not just basketball. It's not just character. It's that academic component that, it's a little different than the Ivy League, but it's Ivy League caliber. So just that journey, and then just leads me to here and how I got here. I don't know how I got here. And it's the cool thing about hearing everybody's story, AB's story, Coach May's story, and, last week, everybody's story is just so cool to hear from me, because I was recruiting Coach Lanier's son, Emory, at Rice, because he's high academic, really good player. And, he's going to Davidson now. But during the time, you just think like, yeah, you're doing your job. You're trying to do a good job. And so hearing why he even called me, to me, was just another a reminder of how things work. And, so he called, he said, hey, I know your wife's from Atlanta, any interest in coming back to Atlanta? And for us, having a 5-year-old daughter, it was a great opportunity to come here. And so that's the journey. But I think, the things that as an assistant coach that you learn, Coach May said it, the people that you work for, in my opinion, is number one. You have to work for really good people as assistant coaches. And the people you work with, right behind it, they become your best friends. You spend so much time together. And, just for me, that's my journey. And those are some of the things that I've taken with me.
Cool. Awesome. Obviously, like I said, Coach, we got to talk a couple weeks back, and that was our first time on the phone, just spending an hour. So does anyone have any questions for Coach Kreider that they want to ask, either about his journey or anything he's picked up?
Yeah, Tommy Freeman here from Hargrave. Just wanted to ask Coach, how did you use some of the things at VMI with the military? I know that's obviously sometimes can be a barrier to getting kids. What kind of things did you sell from the military to kind of promote VMI and get kids to come there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I said, I had no previous experience. So for me, when I got there, it was like a foreign language, and I had to learn it quick. The previous staff, Duger, had that thing rolling, and tried to pick the previous staff's brain about how they did it. How did they get such good players in there? And I think just like any job, you get there, you learn the lay of the land, you figure out what's worked and what hasn't. You pick the brains of people. Don't be too proud or arrogant to do that. Pick the brains of people that have done it successfully at those types of places. And so for me, the biggest thing I learned early on was you can't sugarcoat what it is. It's one of those things where you talk to a kid on the phone. You could do it for a year if you want to. The second he steps on that campus, he's going to have an opinion of what the military life is like. And if you painted a picture like, yeah, you're good, man, it's just a normal spot, he gets there, you have no shot. So what I try to do is paint the grimmest picture almost and kind of test him early, because I knew if I didn't test him early, he's gonna break late. What I learned. So I think the checklist was transcript immediately. Does he have any military in his background? Do the mom and the dad or the grandparent, whoever is in that kid's life, when times get tough and they call home, what's going to be the message? Because those places are just different. And so I think you have to know what it is. You have to embrace what it is. And then, yeah, are there going to be hard days, like really hard days? Yeah, and you get sick of hearing it, but Coach Earl used to say it all the time, you got to figure it out. And I think that's what those places prepare you for. Life, you got to figure it out.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Hey, Chris, this is Jerome Tang. Hey, while you were in the operations role, sort of saying your different roles, what was some things that you did that allowed you to show that you would be able to handle being on the floor or on the road for the next person?
Yeah, that's a great question because at the time the rules were a little different. I tried to find ways to, with CY, I knew he was close to getting a job, and I wanted to try to show him that, yeah, I can help. I can try to learn from you. You can mold me. Like, I want to learn, help me out. So other than being a sponge, I think being organized and constantly, anything you learn, you're writing it down. Anything you see the staff needing, you're organizing it for them. CY's understanding CY, Coach O'Connor, Coach Harris's strengths and weaknesses, and trying in that role, trying to help them do things they don't. Somebody said it on here, like the compliance part. CY didn't want to do that, so help him with the compliance part, the meetings, the organization, the recruiting list, the organizations, the running team camp. Hey, who's the head coach at this high school? Knowing it. If you don't know it, you have a number, you know how to get in touch with them. Yeah, they're coming to team camp, coach. So the recruiting part of it, that was probably easier to show. The basketball part of it, I think the more time you spend with them, we talk about it too as a staff now, when you hire a GA, especially, you want guys that want to be in the room and sit in the corner, listen, learn, and then when they ask your opinion, you like to hear what they say. And at that point, you're on the stage for like 30 seconds or a minute. And then I think guys can start seeing, do you know what you're talking about a little bit? Do you whether it's a car ride, taking Coach Hewitt to the airport, whether it's CY, his phone dying. I remember one thing, just his battery was running out. He needed a battery on a Sunday. I had to go get a cell phone battery, bring it to him, and had a little 5-minute conversation at that point. So little things like that, I think it's a sequence, it's a buildup. It's not one thing like, hey, transition defense, go, show me what you know. It's more like sequential. And then if you do something that fits with who you are and everything you've shown, then I think they're like, okay, yeah, that's my man. But if there's any kind of disconnect, I think, unfortunately, that can be it.
Chris, Russ Williamson, Tennessee State. With being at the mid level, what are you doing right now to prepare yourself to be a head coach?
Yeah, I know you and we've talked about this a lot, Russ. I think the whole time, I had a couple years at St. Francis where I was a head coach at the high school level. And looking back, it was a joke. I wasn't ready. If I could go back, I'd do so many things different. But I've always tried to, someone said it early, write it down. And so I've been trying to write stuff down all the time. And, something that I've tried to do is, like we do scouting reports, do a scouting report on yourself as a coach and be self-aware when you do it. And, I noticed something the last couple of years, I kept writing down the same thing that I got to get better at. So that's a problem. There's little things that if I want to be ready, like AB's saying, to be ready, if I get an opportunity, and for the last 3 years, I've been saying I need to get better at this one thing, that's on me. I haven't worked hard enough, or I haven't been intentional enough about doing it. But, I just think this is maybe my lens. I've seen guys that have been in this profession for 30 plus years that have never gotten head coaching opportunities. And I have a lot of respect for those guys still. So I've tried not to consume myself with that. If it happens, it happens. That's, you and I, we've talked about it, but I think the delicate part for an assistant coach is balancing that, trying to get ready versus being the best where you're at right now and consume with that.
Coach Alvin Bricks III, Baylor University. What are some things now that you're doing to help yourself be better? Like you talking about staying in a moment. What are you doing now to help yourself be better for your program next year?
Yeah, so trying to get a clear understanding of what coach is going to expect from me and from our staff. And, I know you guys have the coordinator deal. We're going to move into some stuff like that too, I think. So just trying to get ahead and prepare for that. So if it's offense, I'm trying to evaluate everything we did this year, what was good, what wasn't, trying to do the same thing, get on every platform that, a lot that you've created and other things, just to learn new things. I find myself, I've worked for a lot of guys, really good coaches, Coach you at Final Four, CY, one of the best recruiters, player development guys that so I've worked for all these guys. We've played different ways. So taking all that and being more open to, is there a way to do it better? Not just saying, here's what we did back then, let's do it here. Or here's the way we always do it. Listening to, I don't know if Cody's still on here, but Cody, Ryan Pannone, all these guys that have different lenses. Like our lens in the college game is just, it's different. So like, I've really appreciated hearing their lens, looking at it from the outside, coming from the pro level or just the overseas deal. So I've been trying to look at things differently.
Coach Kreider, Jeremy Pope, Arizona Compass Prep. I had a question as far as how long did it take you, I guess, over, not just with Coach Lanier, but with all your bosses, to kind of know them, to get to like really kind of not have to ask questions so much about certain things, how they wanted things done, and kind of finding your own niche within the staff and kind of just catching a flow?
Yeah, I would say it takes about a year. I feel like, yeah, is it shorter than that? Maybe 6 months, a couple months. You know who the guy is and what he wants. And I think that's important too. Like self-awareness is important as an assistant, but overall awareness is probably just as important. If you're not aware and can't pick up early, like what really bothers him or what he really wants, it doesn't matter if that's what you like to do. Like that doesn't matter. You got to read him. So I would say in a year's time, like I feel like I know what he's about. I've seen him in the middle of up 20. I've seen him down 20. I've seen him in a practice. I've seen him in film. I've seen him with my wife. I've seen him in a team set. So now I know, okay, this is what this dude's about. So I would say a year and you feel pretty confident.
Anyone else? Coach, one thing I wanted to ask you is you were talking about your volunteer. Obviously, AB hit on earlier, renting, not buying. What are some, because obviously, it's not about the money and you got a lot of younger guys maybe on this call. What are some things you would advise on a guy maybe weighing, do I take a volunteer spot just to get in, or I don't know if I can do it?
Yeah. So a couple pieces of advice that I, looking back, things that helped me or saved me from things. I had with the Georgia Tech option, there was one other opportunity that on paper was comparable, and I was actually having a hard time. Should I really try to go after this or just volunteer? Because, volunteer, it's hard. So someone told me my advice is to get to the highest possible level that you can. And if if it's a volunteer for a year or two, or, and looking back on my journey, I probably wouldn't be where I am today if I wouldn't have taken that one piece of advice. And why do I think that is? I just think you put yourself in a room of people that have the opportunity to get to know you and you get to know them. And there's no guarantee that that's going to work out either. And, so I think the whole thing about this coaching journey is you do the best job you can. You trust that, God's going to open or close doors, and you handle yourself the right way. You consume yourself with your reputation because you only get one. And, that to me was really good advice. And, just, you can't do things just strictly for the money. And, 2 years of it, my wife, I don't know why she let me do it like she did. And she didn't have to. And she's like, yeah, this is what you want to do. I support you. And so, I had to do some things on the side, tutor Spanish, individual workouts, try to make some money on the side. But I think in not just the highest level, I would say surround yourself with the best people, with the guys, the coaching staff that's going to help you. Because I think, you guys, the longer we do it, you'll be in situations that is the case. And then you'll be in situations where maybe people don't take that seriously.
Kind of piggybacking off that last question. It's Daryl LeBear. What's up, Chris?
What's up?
Piggybacking off that last question, would you have done anything differently knowing what you know now? And then what advice do you give younger guys coming up? Because your perspective is very different from the way that you kind of got to where you got to. And I'm sure you've heard other stories of the way other guys have gotten there. So what advice do you give other guys as well?
I would not do anything different. Looking back, I think that's the cool part about, you hear somebody else's story, you learn one or two things, or you're like, man, that's a lot like my journey, or man, that's a lot like your journey. When so you compare them. You're just, when you process yours and others, to me, in my mind, it all makes sense. And it's what we tell players all the time. What you go through here, yeah, you're not starting as a freshman. Trust me, you're going to be fine. So why as coaches, would we not think that? So that's one. And, the second part for young coaches, I think, is the financial piece that AB said was huge. If you're trying to get in, you got to be in a financial situation where you can move fast. Like, if you had a house that you had to sell, or, you had something you had to tie up, you got to be ready to move. You got to be ready to move wherever. I had to go to Montana for my first opportunity. Great Falls, Montana. Never been back. I don't know if I ever go again. I mean, I loved it, but I had to go to Montana for mine. But I think count the cost too. Like, why do you coach? And I think sometimes the longer you do it, you see different guys go through their journeys, and you have different decisions you have to make. But why do you, at the end of the day, why do you coach? And if you can answer those questions in a reason that makes sense for your family financially and supporting them and all that, then I think some guys might get into coaching for the wrong reasons and then end up not working out. But if you're in it for the right reasons, I think it'll all come together.
I appreciate it.
Anyone else got anything for Coach Kreider? All right, Coach. Obviously I can't thank you enough for being on. Do you have any kind of things you want to close with as we kind of wrap up today?
No, other than just saying thanks again. I really appreciate it. Learned a lot myself. And then, I think AB said it, Coach May said it, just keep finding ways to get better. I think that's what this time is really allowing us all to do, and keep sharing with each other, and just remember what this thing's all about.
Sure, absolutely. Coach, if you do, up to you, want to put anything in the chat to people to keep in touch with you.
Yeah, for sure.
Feel free. But guys, I appreciate, obviously, we got chugging along today, but I'll be honest, my cup is overflowing. So I appreciate you guys being on, and thank you for spending some time with us, Coach May, AB, Coach Kreider. Thank you guys for joining us and sharing your journeys. As everyone has kind of echoed, that's one of my favorite parts about it, is hearing everybody's journeys. And the guy next to me is, we're doing this for the same reason. We're about the same cause, but how he got here is a little different than how I got here. And I think that's the cool thing about this business is that. So guys, again, I appreciate everything. Obviously we'll get going again next week, and thank you guys again for being on.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you to all the coaches that joined today.
Thank you again, Coach Dave.
Thanks, AB. Thanks, Coach May and Coach Kreider as
Thanks,
well.
everybody. Thanks, DB, baby.
Thanks for having me on. All the information.
AB, get your boy.
I know. What do you call
Thanks,
you, the
everyone.
hammer?
Hammer.
Oh, man.